The Hogwarts professor mixed into Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. Hello, Gilderoy Malfoy. Rita Skeeter, the contract has been signed. You should know the consequences of violating it. Lockhart looked at Rita Skeeter, who came down from the cross, and said indifferently, "My lord, I know. Rita Skeeter seemed to recall the pain just now, trembling all over, and nodded quickly. Okay, in the future, sneak into the Pureblood family camp well. Lockhart said lightly, you will not be short of benefits. As he said, Lockhart stretched out his hand and a space extension bag flew into Rita Skeeter's hand. There are 100 gold galleons in it, which is your initial activity funds. What happens later? My house elf Gold will notify you. Similarly, if there is anything important later, you can also contact Gold directly, not directly contact me," Lockhart instructed lightly. After hearing this, Rita Skeeter nodded heavily, and Lockhart's previous instructions emerged in her mind, and a bitter smile appeared on her face. If you often walk by the river, you will get your shoes wet. This time it's really a failure. Recalling the pale golden magic contract that just floated into her soul, Rita Skeeter felt a little weak. Lockhart is definitely a dark wizard. How could an ordinary wizard raise a basilisk? When she thought of the moodiness of the dark wizards and the rumors, combined with the cold breath and oppressive words that Lockhart just exuded, Rita Skeeter felt a little desperate. However, after opening the space extension bag and looking at the familiar golden light inside, Rita Skeeter felt a little better. Knowing that he would give rewards and not let her pay for it herself, Lockhart should be better than the rumored dark wizard, right? While Rita Skeeter was thinking, she suddenly saw Lockhart waving his wand to outline a circle. In an instant, a portal with sparks opened, just when she was surprised to see completely unfamiliar and unknown magic. Then looking at the familiar alley scene opposite, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. Finally, she can leave and go home. Rita, go back and practice the brain block technique well. These are some of my experiences. They will be good for you to hide in the Pureblood family camp in the future," Lockhart said lightly, and at the same time, he gently waved his hand and a book floated into Rita Skeeter's hands. "Okay, sir." After taking the book, Rita nodded very obediently. Spying is such a dangerous thing. It must be taken seriously. If this is discovered, the Pureblood family will kill her, which will be a problem. Then, Rita followed Lockhart's instructions and stepped out of the portal. Back to the alley. Buzz. Lockhart waved his hand and the portal closed instantly. For people like Rita Skeeter who fear power but not morality, coercion and inducement are the most effective methods. Of course, it is also necessary to knock from time to time like Voldemort's Horcrux. I hope that this Rita Skeeter can bring him some good news. With a flash of thought, Lockhart looked at the tidied underground palace again. Because the location of this underground palace in the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets is very secret. Over the past thousands of years, very few people have discovered it. The last one was discovered by Voldemort 30 or 40 years ago. Therefore, it is a good choice to use it as a temporary secret base. Later, gold coins can be used to feed the basilisk here. While thinking, Lockhart once again focused his eyes on the location of the stone chamber. He did not forget that there was a Slytherin Horcrux there. The wand gently drew a graceful arc in the air, and the sparking lines quietly emerged. A portal leading to the Slytherin stone chamber slowly opened. Step. Lockhart took a step forward, and a footstep sounded in the originally quiet stone chamber. "Hey, is someone here again?" The Slytherin portrait sensed the breath of life, quietly woke up, opened his eyes, and saw a familiar figure. "Hello, Gilderoy Malfoy." The Slytherin portrait greeted with a hint of teasing in his tone, as if he knew it was a fake name. Hearing the Slytherin portrait's address, Lockhart's eyes twitched. After thinking for a while, he said softly, "Mr. Slytherin, you should call me Lockhart. It's more pleasant to the ear." "Okay, Lockhart," the Slytherin portrait said readily. "This time when I woke up, I didn't expect to meet such an interesting person and interesting magic. Well, For an old monster like Slytherin who has survived for thousands of years, Lockhart's previous performance can be summarized as interesting. It is enough to prove that Slytherin is curious about Lockhart. Lockhart, do you have any questions for this time in the stone chamber? Slytherin asked with a smile. Of course, according to the previous rules. One question for another. Okay, Lockhart thought for a while, then nodded and agreed. Mr. Slytherin, I went back to look up information about Horcruxes and have a general understanding of it. I'd like to ask, is Slytherin still alive in this world? Hearing Lockhart's question, Slytherin thought for a while and said, I don't know either. I'm just Slytherin's split soul, creating an existence similar to a clone. It possesses most of his knowledge as the inheritance Slytherin left to Hogwarts. Hearing this, Lockhart seemed to be thinking about something, and continued to ask, by the way, Mr. Slytherin, it is said that Slytherin hates half-bloods very much, so there is a rumor in Hogwarts that when the number of purebloods in Hogwarts is less one day, the Chamber of Secrets will be opened, and all half-bloods will be cleaned out. Is this rumor true? Yes. Slytherin nodded without hesitation. Then, looking at Lockhart who was surprised, he explained, this was the decision Slytherin made at the time. In his time, half-blood wizards basically belonged to various Muggle kingdoms, and very few of them were trustworthy. In that period, Slytherin only trusted purebloods, and only children born to wizards were trustworthy. Although Gryffindor later asked Hogwarts to recruit half-bloods, Slytherin still believed that half-bloods were unreliable, so he left the last resort as a measure to protect the last inheritance of Hogwarts. Slytherin looked at Lockhart who was lost in thought, and continued, of course, after all these years of development, I also know some changes in the wizarding world, and this method will not be easily activated. Hearing this, Lockhart felt something was wrong, and hurriedly asked, Mr. Slytherin, wasn't the method you left behind before the basilisk? Or are there other methods? Lockhart, this is your third question. Slytherin said with a smile. After answering this question, it's your turn to answer my question. The basilisk is just a means left behind, but you have to know that the basilisk will die one day. So Slytherin left other means behind. At this point, the portrait of Slytherin hinted, don't forget, Hogwarts is a magic castle, and Slytherin is its founder. Okay, it's your turn to answer my questions. Slytherin interrupted Lockhart who was lost in thought, and asked 3 questions directly. Tell me, who is the current headmaster of Hogwarts? What is the new magic system you are talking about? What has happened in the wizarding world in recent years? Chapter 152. Let the wizarding world become great again. Facing the 3 questions from the Slytherin portrait, Lockhart's mind was racing. Judging from the questions, the other party still couldn't detect what was happening in Hogwarts. And from the answer just now, it can be seen that Slytherin should not have too much malice. Otherwise, when Voldemort came in, it would be over. Despite this, Lockhart still did not let down his guard. After thinking for a moment, Lockhart decided to change his attitude to face the Slytherin portrait. Mr. Slytherin, the current headmaster of Hogwarts is Albus Dumbledore. I wonder if you have heard of him? As he said, Lockhart waved his wand, outlining the white-haired but kind-faced headmaster Dumbledore, and continued to introduce. He defeated 2 generations of Dark Lords in the wizarding world and enjoys a very high reputation in the wizarding world. Let Hogwarts reach a new peak. Hearing this, the Slytherin portrait murmured to itself, as if praising 2 generations of Dark Lords, this Dumbledore looks good. What about the new magic system? Slytherin continued to ask. Lockhart looked at the portrait of Slytherin, and did not ask about the Dark Lord. He was a little disappointed, but he continued to answer. Regarding the new magic system, I still have one thing to apologize for. To borrow a phrase you said before, when facing magical items with thoughts, we must remain extremely vigilant. So, in terms of the new magic system, some of the information last time was false. It's okay, Lockhart. Continue to introduce. Slytherin looked at Lockhart with an apologetic face and continued. Of course, he knew that there was a lot of false information in the last exchange, but he was still very satisfied with the other party's honest attitude. It seems that the professors recruited by Hogwarts are still good. Okay, Mr. Slytherin. Lockhart said with a faint smile on his face. Regarding the new magic system, the most important point I said last time was not wrong. That is, to lower the threshold for learning magic. Let squibs become wizards, let wizards no longer rely on blood, let the wizard world become great again. At the end, Lockhart's voice obviously rose a level, and a trace of desire and ambition flowed between his words. Whether in words or image, he looked more and more like a student of Slytherin College. The portrait of Slytherin saw this scene, but did not speak, just watched quietly. Seeing this, Lockhart was not surprised, and bowed gracefully, with a hint of pride, and said, "Now, I want to give you a comprehensive introduction. I, Gilderoy Lockhart, a best-selling author in the wizarding world, a recipient of the Order of Merlin, a member of the Anti-Dark Arts League, and a professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts. Of course, the identity that makes me most proud is the founder of the new magic system." Hearing this, the portrait of Slytherin showed a hint of surprise, and became more and more curious about Lockhart in front of him. Then he continued to hear the new magic system I created has now received the full support of Headmaster Dumbledore. It has been tried to be initially promoted in Hogwarts, and outside squibs have been recruited for the final test. Now, the entire wizarding world has known about the new magic system we created, and Hogwarts will become a holy place for the new magic system in the future. Having said this, Lockhart stopped introducing. The Slytherin portrait was also intrigued and asked directly, "Can you introduce some more of the new magic system?" "Of course, Mr. Slytherin." Lockhart nodded and said, "The new magic system is an innovation of the magic system in the wizarding world. It is based on meditation and runes." Hearing this, Slytherin muttered to himself, "Meditation? Runes?" He really knew nothing about these two, and was very unfamiliar with them. Seeing this, Lockhart waved his wand directly, and a pale yellow ball of light appeared at the tip of the wand. Under Lockhart's control, it slowly floated towards the Slytherin portrait. At the same time, he introduced, "Mr. Slytherin, this is some information about meditation and runes. You can take a look." As the information ball of light sank into the portrait, Slytherin closed his eyes and began to review the information brought by the ball of light. After a long time, the new magic system is indeed extraordinary. Slytherin opened his eyes and praised directly without hesitation. "I now believe that the new magic system can indeed make the wizarding world stronger again." At this point, Sniderlin's tone was a little excited, as if he thought of the huge impact that the new magic system had on the entire wizarding world. As the founders of Hogwarts, the four of them swept across the entire British wizarding world, jointly created the Hogwarts Wizard Training System, and innovated the wizarding system at that time. Faced with another innovation, it is natural to subconsciously like it. Seeing this, Lockhart was not in a hurry to continue the conversation, but continued, "Mr. Slytherin, can I call you Salazar?" As he said, without waiting for Slytherin to reply, Lockhart continued to talk, bringing the topic back to the Dark Lord. "Regarding your third question, the major events that have occurred in the wizarding world recently. In addition to the new magic system, there is another major event that has profoundly affected the development of the wizarding world. That is the birth of the second generation Dark Lord Voldemort. Since the birth of Voldemort, the British wizarding world has fallen on a large scale. A large number of wizards and muggles have been massacred by him. Hogwarts was almost invaded by him, and was even faced with closure at one point. At Voldemort's peak, even Headmaster Dumbledore was no match for him. If it weren't for Headmaster Dumbledore's plan to defeat him later, I'm afraid Hogwarts would either be closed or under Voldemort's control now." At this point, Lockhart seemed a little worried and said, "However, last year, Voldemort's traces began to appear. I'm afraid it won't be long before Voldemort will reappear in the wizarding world. By then, I'm afraid we won't be able to rely on Headmaster Dumbledore." Hearing this, Slytherin asked subconsciously, "Lockhart, what is Voldemort's real name?" He felt that Voldemort was a title, and he had a bad premonition in his heart. "I know this. His name seems to be Tom Riddle." Lockhart was concerned. When he said this name, the expression on Slytherin's portrait changed obviously, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised. After the previous chat, it was found that Slytherin still maintained enthusiasm and concern for Hogwarts. Although he didn't know why, Lockhart decided to take advantage of this. Therefore, in the front, he kept talking about the relationship between Hogwarts and the infiltration of the new magic system, while praising Hogwarts School, and the impact on Hogwarts and the wizarding world. Later, he talked about the various negative effects that Voldemort had on Hogwarts and the wizarding world. Until the last moment, Slytherin's emotions were detonated through the name of Tom Riddle. You know, the students he trained almost destroyed his school. Slytherin's emotions did not change at all, so Lockhart had to be alert. Sure enough, Slytherin's voice came to Lockhart's ear. Lockhart, please tell me more about the second generation of the Dark Lord Voldemort. Chapter 153, A Man Ruined by a Woman's Mouth. Late at night, Hogwarts, Lockhart's office. Lockhart leaned back in his chair, looking at the wand on the desk, recalling the conversation with Slytherin's portrait not long ago, with a faint smile on his face. Sure enough, the students he trained had a great negative impact on the school he founded, Hogwarts, and even the British wizarding world. Slytherin felt a little guilty. In addition, Lockhart exaggerated the danger of Voldemort's return. Slytherin subconsciously wanted to make up for it, and Lockhart happened to mention the changes brought about by the new magic system, which helped. It's easy to introduce it to the ship of the new magic system. After getting on this ship, think about it. Lockhart said, come when you want, leave when you want, don't you take me seriously? Well, in fact, for a top dark wizard, the pursuit of magical knowledge is engraved in his bones. Lockhart can certainly use this feature to lure Slytherin to work for him. However, Slytherin's Horcrux has gone through thousands of years and still cares about Hogwarts. If it is fake, it's fine. If it is real, this makes Lockhart very curious. How did Slytherin do it back then? After a little thought, Lockhart began to think about other things first. Now it is less than 2 weeks away from arriving in the Marvel world. In this limited time, some tasks can no longer be delayed. Thinking of the magic guns he saw in Gringotts before, Lockhart made a decision in his heart. Close your eyes slightly, and recall the goblin named Can that you met at the Blackstone auction. Slightly sense the mark left by yourself, and after a few seconds, Lockhart's eyes lit up. It is late at night now. Just now, he sensed that the other party's life breath is stable, and there is no large amount of life breath around him. It means that the other party should be sleeping soundly. However, he just sensed that there seems to be a breath of life next to the can, which is a bit puzzled. But he didn't mean to explore it. Maybe it's a pet. Then Lockhart waved his wand, drew a beautiful arc in the air, and a portal with sparks quietly formed. Well, recently he has also been studying how to localize the magic of Kamar-Taj. After all, many magics of Kamar-Taj are based on the ring. And for wizards, it is obvious that the ring is an unknown thing. In order to facilitate the learning of wizards in the Harry Potter world, he constantly tried to transform some of Kamar-Taj's ring spells into wand spells. The portal is one of his achievements. The thought flashed through his mind, and Lockhart stepped into the portal. The black market of towns, the Fiery Inn. Because of the exquisite auction skills of the Goblin Can, many wizards have bleed a lot. But for the Blackstone auction, the more the wizard bleeds, the more commission they get. Therefore, the Goblin Can got a lot of gold galleons as a reward with the help of the last auction. Let him have a good time these days. Look, after having fun with a female goblin, he lay on the bed in the hotel and fell asleep. The female goblin next to him was also in a deep sleep after some hard work. At this moment, suddenly, buzz, a circular portal with sparks quietly emerged, and Lockhart stepped into it and entered the Fire Tavern. Then, he frowned and covered his nose lightly. The smell was a bit strange. Then he looked at the bed, and his heart was cold, and his eyes twitched. Two short goblins, hugging each other, lying on the bed, were really a bit spicy. But when he thought of his plan, he injured the nausea and cast a silencing spell to the room, to prevent the sound from being transmitted. Then soul out of the body. Soul out of the body. Lockhart waved his wand and cast the Imperious Curse. Two green lights emerged from the tip and quickly hit the two goblins on the bed. He told the two goblins that he was going to dress, and Lockhart turned around quickly. My lord, it's done. He heard the sound of the two goblins finishing dressing. Lockhart turned around slowly, looked at the Goblin Can with a slightly red face, and asked with nausea, tell me, which goblin alchemists do you know their addresses? Hearing Lockhart's question, the dazed goblin can slowly said, "My lord, although I know the identities of many goblin alchemists, I only know the specific addresses of 2, because most alchemists keep their addresses strictly confidential. Tell me," Lockhart ordered. The goblin can said in a daze, "My lord, one is in Gaston Valley, France, and the other is in the small town of Pokhara, Germany." Hearing the can's answer, Lockhart's face was a little ugly. He thought that this goblin auctioneer, who came into contact with so many people every day, probably knew the addresses of some goblin alchemists. Then he could go to their homes for friendly exchanges. As a result, there were only 2 addresses, and both were abroad. How long would it take to get there? When he thought of this, Lockhart hesitated. Should he go to Gringotts and take away those goblin masters deep in the underground vault? The level of those alchemists is indeed good, but once they are tied up, they will be too conspicuous. When Lockhart thought of the tight security deep in the underground vault, he felt a headache. While thinking, Lockhart saw the female goblin who was also controlled next to him. Thinking that asking one question is also asking 2 questions is also asking. So he asked lightly, "Tell me the information of the goblin alchemist you know." The goblin replied in a trance, "My lord, I know the goblin Bruno. He is an alchemist. He used to let me into his house every once in a while." Lockhart just heard the goblin's reply, and his heart suddenly jumped, a little surprised. But when he saw the goblin began to explain more details, he immediately interrupted and asked in a deep voice, "Tell me his specific address." "Okay, my lord." The goblin said, "Master Bruno is at 36 Manta Street in Hogsmeade." Hearing that the goblin was about to start to talk in detail again, Lockhart interrupted again, "Tell me, what defense measures are there in his house? How could an alchemist not set up some protective measures in his home? Like Snape, he set up many evil spells in his office, and Lockhart himself is the same. This is a personal space, and safety and privacy are very important." Sure enough, the fairy replied, "Before, in bed, Master Bruno boasted to me that there are 2 magic traps in the living room, and at the staircase. There are also magic items." Lockhart listened carefully to the fairy's answer, and remembered it deeply in his mind. After listening, he felt 100,000 sympathies for Bruno, the fairy alchemist master. Sure enough, sometimes women are men's weaknesses. I don't know how many men have been ruined by women's mouths. Chapter 154 The Importance of Style. Late at night, Hogsmeade 36 Manta Street, Alchemy Hut. Bruno the Goblin was in the small alchemy workshop in his house. He was concentrating on observing the grey boots in front of him. Bruno picked up a small alchemy hammer in his right hand and tapped the sole of the boots gently. Dung, dung, dung. With the crisp sound, a special magic power emanated from the alchemy hammer and entered the sole of the boots. Almost instantly, a large number of light blue lines flashed on the sole, forming a strange pattern. As time passed, the light blue light gradually dimmed, then disappeared, and returned to normal. Bruno the Goblin recalled the large number of rune threads that had just emerged, frowning slightly, as if he couldn't believe it. So he took the alchemy hammer again, and tapped the sole. Soon, a large number of lines with light blue light appeared again, covering the entire sole, outlining one rune pattern after another. This time, Bruno was more attentive, comparing the rune pattern in front of him, and quickly copied it down on parchment. As the rune pattern disappeared again, a small part of the pattern appeared on the parchment. Then, Bruno tapped the sole of his shoe again, and copied the part of the pattern that was not recorded on the parchment. He repeated this 3 or 4 times. The complete rune pattern was recorded on the parchment. Bruno, who had completed the task, held up the parchment, held it in front of his eyes under the light. He observed carefully, and compared it with the ancient runes in his memory. However, the more he observed, the tighter Bruno's brows frowned, because he found that he could not interpret these rune patterns at all, as if they had nothing to do with the ancient runes. Alas. After a long time, Bruno sighed. We are all alchemists, so why do we have to be so strict? I just want to learn some technology. Why do I have to do things so thoroughly? Which colleague developed this anti-counterfeiting technology? I can't even see any traces of ancient runes. Could it be that I have been having a lot of fun recently, and my level has dropped again? Bruno fell into self-doubt. Afterwards, Bruno picked up the boots of Hermes obtained from the auction and placed them in front of himself, looking frustrated. These 610 gold galleons were really a loss. Originally, at the auction, Bruno found this pair of boots that were said to allow wizards to walk in the air. He immediately had the idea of counterfeiting them. In the current wizarding world, flying mostly relies on magic brooms and the boots that allow people to walk in the air. Just thinking about it, you can see how much money is in it. I dare not say anything else, but he is quite experienced in the business of counterfeiting and counterfeiting. With this skill, he is also quite famous in the Goblin Circle. He does not ask for 100% complete imitation, as long as he can copy 50% to 60% and make the style more fashionable. He can definitely make a lot of gold galleons. So, he bought it at a high price and prepared to learn from it. As a result, Bruno set his eyes on the boots of Hermes again, and a trace of melancholy flashed in his eyes. The anti-counterfeiting of his peers left no room for error, which made his plan completely fail, and spent so many gold galleons for no reason. As Bruno's thoughts turned, he began to think about how to transfer the boots, not asking for how much money he could make, but asking not to lose money. Of course, with the current state of this grey boot, it is impossible to sell 610 gold galleons. But through his hands, make it old, add some complex ancient runes, and the private imprint of the ancient alchemist. Isn't it a magic boot with an ancient history? While thinking, Bruno has begun to think about which master's method to use. Making old, counterfeiting, and copying all require talent. People without talent can't observe the characteristics of genuine and fake products at all. If you can't observe it, what can you use to fake it? Just your mouth. With a flash of thought, Bruno has decided to transfer it in the name of Master Terry Angelo's relics. TSK. Master Angelo has made considerable achievements in the field of magic boots, and the styles are relatively simple. Moreover, the styles are not too different. With some modifications, it can be imitated to about 80% or 90%. After making up his mind, Bruno picked up the alchemy pen next to him, infused magic power, and carefully carved various complex but useless rune patterns on the surface of the boots. Well, a magic item has effects on one hand and style on the other. It is obvious that the alchemist who made this magic boots did not understand this. The shape of this boots is too ordinary, as if it was made on an assembly line. If this alchemist cooperates with me, his technology plus the style of my own design will definitely make a lot of money. I'm familiar with the various styles of all the works of alchemy masters for thousands of years. If I take out any one, I will definitely make a fortune. While complaining, Bruno began to make modifications to the details. Fortunately, the functions of the boots themselves are good, so it is enough to modify them on this basis. Otherwise, he would have to spend a lot of effort to add some functions to it. As time passed slowly, the original magic boots of Kamar-Taj style, under Bruno's careful carving, it became a simple, mysterious magic boots that exuded a mysterious atmosphere. At first glance, it feels that this magic boot is not simple. Especially the large number of ancient runes on the surface, which seem to imply some kind of rules after combination, showing a kind of beauty that is hard to explain. To describe it in one word, that is, high-end. Yes, it is high-end. You can see at a glance that this magic boot is much more advanced than other boots. Very cool. Bruno picked up the magic boots, admired his work, and smiled with satisfaction. In order to celebrate his extraordinary performance, he must go and be cool and unrestrained after selling the gold galleons. Suddenly, click, click, click. Bruno seemed to hear the sound of mirror breaking and was slightly confused. Then his face changed and he actually felt a cold magic power sweeping across his body. Even his alchemy HUD was completely covered. Seeing this, Bruno didn't care about appreciating it and directly put the Hermes boots in his hand on his feet. He took out his most handy alchemy hammer with a slight pull. Then, as if he thought of something, he took out a magic leather armor and put it on himself. Then he walked directly outside. Bruno had just left the alchemy workshop and returned to his living room. As soon as he stepped into the living room, he felt something was wrong. After a little thought, a look of horror appeared on his face. He actually didn't hear any sound, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the sound of birds, the barking of dogs, etc. It seemed empty and strange. Bruno's heart suddenly jumped, and he quickly ran down the stairs to his study. There was the main control room of his alchemy hut. In less than half a minute, Bruno ran into the study. However, Bruno, who had just stepped into the study, felt cold all over, and his legs and feet were weak. He actually saw a huge light yellow eye appear outside the window. Thanks to Kan 000, there are things that the holy light will never tell you. Book friend 202107171511331111. Waiting for the moon to shine on the West Tower. LHC 960310. Fairy Sword Mystery. WC 401,015,639. Lover of Guantanamo. Lengayu Yehutao. German Vertical Bar Sparrow. Kevin 93's monthly ticket. Chapter 155 Mirror Space Upgrade. Bang. When Bruno saw the huge yellowish eyes outside the glass, he felt weak all over and quickly lay on the ground. He was afraid that he would be seen by the other party. It was too scary. It was really too scary. How could there be such evil eyes in the world? The eyes alone were so big. How huge must its body be? Bruno recalled the trembling of looking into the other party's eyes, as if he was facing death at any time. He was almost scared to death. Then, watching the huge yellowish eyes leave, Bruno had some strength to stand up. Slowly moved forward, walked to the desk and slapped the button on the desk hard. Bang. In an instant. Buzz. 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 A large number of dark blue lines quickly appeared on the surface of the whole house, emitting a large amount of magic fluctuations. Then, the surface of the whole house seemed to be wrapped by a huge blue light film, or it was similar to the existence of a protective shield. After feeling that the defense measures of the alchemy hut were activated, he sat on the chair with peace of mind, feeling the strength of his body recovering quickly. I was really scared to death just now. How could there be such evil eyes in the world? It seemed that one look would lead to death. But bang, bang, bang. Bruno, who had just relaxed a little, suddenly heard a deafening roar in his ears, as if the house was about to break. This made his face look very ugly. In his feeling, the alchemy hut was being attacked, and each attack was not weak. He could feel a faint tremor in the house, while sitting in the study. At this attack intensity, if no other measures were taken, it would probably be destroyed soon. With a flash of thought in his mind, Bruno hurriedly pressed the button again, and pressed it 3 times in a row, as if he was opening some mechanism. Instantly raw. The goblin Bruno only felt a huge roar coming from the side. But he didn't have time to think about it, and quickly took out a brown disc, the prohibited item door key. Time went back to 10 minutes ago. Lockhart stood in front of the alchemy hut, recalling the information just interrogated, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This goblin alchemist was really afraid of death. During the interrogation just now, the female goblin revealed a lot of magical traps and defensive measures about the alchemy hut. The large number of them made Lockhart feel a little tricky. This shows how scared or timid this goblin is. But it's good to be scared of death. Knowing the horror of death, one will be truly obedient. If he is really fearless, he will feel more trouble. Standing at the door of the alchemy hut, Lockhart had no idea of going in directly. How stupid he was to do this. Since he knew that the other party had set up so many magic traps and defensive measures in the house, he still stuck to it dryly, which was really asking for death. Although the female goblin spit out a lot of information just now, he didn't dare to believe it all. Otherwise, if he was accidentally trapped by those unknown traps, it would be a loss. As an alchemist, making money depends on magic items, but fighting depends on magic items even more. Arrange various offensive and defensive measures through alchemy. This is the most common way for alchemists to fight. As an alchemist, there will be more means. As long as an alchemist is provided with enough resources and time, he can completely turn a place into a fortress or a high-risk venue. Ordinary wizards simply cannot break through. Therefore, although Lockhart has obtained a lot of information, he did not intend to rush in directly. But no matter what, this goblin cannot be allowed to run away. If it runs away, it will be more difficult to catch it next time. With a flash of thought, Lockhart waved his wand lightly. The wand was waved slowly but powerfully by his right hand, outlining one rune after another, shining silver light in the air. This time, the magic obviously took longer, but it was more powerful. Large pieces of runes were combined together like a brocade article, outlining a strange rune pattern. When the complete rune pattern was outlined, dense transparent ripples bloomed in an instant, as if shattering the space, and continued to spread around. Trees, stone piers, walls, houses, streets, and even the alchemy hut were all covered. Crack, crack, crack. A sound like a broken mirror, no, a broken space, came into Lockhart's ears. Magic, mirror space, upgraded version. Whoosh. The subtle sound of the wind stopped, the birds and beasts stopped calling, and everything was quiet and deserted. In Lockhart's eyes, the world in front of him was grayish white. Only he, the basilisk, and the alchemy hut in front of him had all kinds of colors of reality. The new mirror space is an upgraded version that Lockhart has continuously studied, summarized, and refined by combining the magic knowledge obtained from the two worlds. The original mirror space in the Harry Potter world not only consumed a lot of energy, but also had a narrow space to open up. It was even impossible to copy some scenes that should be full of magic. It could only copy those scenes that had no magic or only weak magic. After the upgraded version of the mirror world, although the space that can be opened up is still limited, the consumption has been reduced a lot, and the space can also be slightly distorted. The most important thing is that, although those scenes full of magic cannot be projected, the mirror space can completely swallow them up. Just like the alchemy hut now, Lockhart is outside and cannot directly pull the goblin Bruno into the mirror space through the defense of the alchemy hut. But it is completely possible to directly pull the entire alchemy hut into the mirror space and then solve it together. Of course, the gray and white color is also a feature of the new version of the mirror space. Seeing the alchemy hut in front of him, Lockhart called the contract and signaled the basilisk to return to its normal size. Bang, bang, boom. In Lockhart's eyes, the originally small basilisk quickly became thicker and larger at a speed visible to the naked eye. The huge body directly crushed the surrounding grass, stones, and stone piers, making a bang. In the end, because the body was too large, it was connected to a wall around it and collapsed directly. Looking at the huge body of the basilisk, Lockhart tapped the ground lightly with his toes and jumped up. A burst of magic power instantly burst out from the boots under his feet. Let Lockhart float in the air, and as he continued to take steps, he walked in the air until he walked in front of the huge head of the basilisk, and the entire alchemy hut came into view. Call the basilisk and directly enter the range of the alchemy hut. Lockhart tried to rely on the huge body and powerful force of the basilisk to forcibly destroy the alchemy hut. This time, he wanted to make the goblin submit completely from body to soul and dare not have any distracting thoughts. The character of the goblin race is typical of fearing power but not virtue. When they are weak, they really kneel and lick like pet dogs, as if they are doing their best to serve their masters. But when they are strong, they bite like mad dogs and will not stop until they bite the enemy to death. Especially the last time, Lockhart saw the group of goblins wearing magic guns in Gringotts, which made him deeply touched. This can't help but remind him of a country in his previous life. From the perspective of a wizard, the disgust in his heart is even higher. Suddenly, the surface of the entire alchemy hut bloomed with dense dark blue lines, and then a dark blue defense shield rose. Lockhart was not surprised to see it. It was really a ghost, if the other party didn't notice it at all after such a big commotion just now. Then, he called the basilisk and began to smash the entire alchemy hut directly according to the plan. Bang, bang, bang. Under Lockhart's command, the basilisk used its huge body to smash the alchemy hut. After each hit, the dark blue shield glowed with dazzling blue light. The magic flowed above, as if resisting all attacks. However, as the basilisk continued to hit the shield with its tail, the dark blue shield slowly began to dim. Seeing this, Lockhart raised his lips. Suddenly roar. The alchemy hut that had been smashed just now suddenly burst into a large amount of dark blue thunder and hit the body of the basilisk. The basilisk roared loudly in pain. This made Lockhart's eyes focus, knowing that the other party had begun to resist. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Bruno's Careful Plan. Despair. Bruno the Goblin held the brown disc in his hand, his eyes dim and his expression depressed. It's over. Why doesn't the portkey work? Could it be that the Ministry of Magic did it? In Bruno's cognition, anti-apparition can indeed prohibit spatial movement, but it can never affect the portkey. Only when the Ministry of Magic dispatches magical items that are specifically used to confine space can the portkey be restricted. But when the thought came to his mind, Bruno directly denied it. It is impossible that the Ministry of Magic did it personally. He didn't do anything unscrupulous. It was nothing more than counterfeiting, selling fakes, counterfeiting magic items, and making gold galleons. Even so, he did it carefully. Every item he handled, when shipped, the effect was absolutely the same as he said. It's just that it may be completely ineffective after a week or a month. With this trick, plus he concealed his identity when selling these counterfeit magic items. Basically no one can trouble him. Moreover, even if he was really exposed, he wouldn't have to mobilize such a big battle. He had never heard of the Ministry of Magic raising such a big python. Moreover, he felt more and more that it was the work of a dark wizard. Bruno felt weak all over when he thought of the dark wizard. He often mixed in the black market. He didn't dare to say that he knew the methods of those dark wizards in detail, but he knew them roughly. These guys, because of the frequent use of black magic, have very unstable temperaments, and it is normal for them to have occasional mental illnesses. Suddenly, boom. A huge roar sounded in his ears. Bruno looked up at the window and found that there were a large number of giant flaming stones floating in the sky, like meteorites, directly bombarding his alchemy hut. At this moment, Lockhart waved his wand and slightly affected the mirror space to condense a large amount of soil and rocks into stones. Although he could not control things at will like in the Marvel world, Lockhart could still slightly affect the upgraded mirror space. Then, he controlled a large number of giant stones, or meteorites, to float behind him, and cast the flame spell at the same time to increase its power. Although the lightning strike just now did not cause the basilisk to suffer serious damage, Lockhart could feel the pain of the basilisk through the contract. Then, he called the basilisk to leave, preparing to break the defense attack outside first. Fortunately, he did not fight inside this time. It was already a bit troublesome outside. If he was inside, letting the goblins control the traps at will, it might really tie up his hands and feet. Lockhart's thoughts flashed, looking at the large number of flaming meteorites floating behind him again. He waved his wand and rode towards the alchemy hut. Boom. 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 As a large number of meteorites shot towards the alchemy hut emitted a large amount of thunder, continuously smashing the incoming meteorites. But it was obvious that with the continuous attack of the meteorites, the thunder became weaker and weaker. After a while, the power of the thunder was almost weakened to the extreme. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. This time, Lockhart called the basilisk again, letting it vent its inner grievances and pain. Bang, bang, bang. The basilisk once again swung its body and smashed into the alchemy hut, making loud noises. And this time, due to its inner anger, it smashed harder, and the sound became more deafening. Under the continuous attack, the only remaining defense shield dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then my lord, I surrender, I surrender. Lockhart heard the voice in his ear, raised his eyebrows, looked at the white flag flying above the roof, and curled his lips. However, Lockhart seemed to have heard nothing, did not stop the basilisk's attack, and looked at the increasingly dim defense shield with an indifferent expression. Finally, click, click, boom. But the basilisk hit hard again, and the defense shield broke with a crackling sound. At the same time, the alchemy hut, which had lost its defense, collapsed partly due to the impact of the basilisk, making a loud noise. Seeing this, Lockhart signaled the basilisk to come back, and he controlled his body to land on the basilisk's head. Stepping on the snake's head, Lockhart pointed his wand at his throat and quietly released a wandless amplification spell. Bruno, since you have surrendered, come out. As Lockhart's loud voice spread around, the goblin Bruno poked his head out of the study and looked at the huge basilisk in front of him, especially the wizard on the snake's head, with a look of panic. However, when he thought that all his means were completely ineffective, Bruno hurriedly shouted loudly, fearing that the black wizard would attack again. My lord, I will come out immediately. As he said, Bruno opened the window of the study, holding a white flag, activated the magic boots on his feet, and hurriedly stepped into the air. This move actually also implied his little tricks. He hoped that through such an action, he could show the black wizard his alchemy level and let him try not to abuse him. Well, he had a rough guess about Lockhart's action this time. For him, in addition to a bunch of valuable magic items, his alchemy level was the most valuable. Therefore, it always followed its heart. In order to get a little better treatment in the future, it deliberately showed its alchemy level. Otherwise, don't think it is worthless and get rid of it. He had heard that dark wizards were merciless to worthless people. The most typical case was the Dark Lord. According to legend, the Dark Lord's wizards were extremely cruel to worthless goblins. They would take a life at any time, and at the very least, they would torture him with the Cruciatus Curse. They didn't take life seriously at all. After thinking about it, the goblin Bruno walked in the air, waving the white flag in his hand, indicating his surrender. At this time, Lockhart looked at the goblin Bruno walking in the air with great interest, especially the pair of boots on his feet. If he hadn't been sharp-eyed, he would have seen the Kamar-Taj mark on the shoes, and the general appearance was similar. I'm afraid he would have thought it was a magic item similar to the Hermes boots. However, at first glance, the modified Hermes boots are obviously more advanced, revealing a mysterious and magical taste. It's like a magic boot that has been carefully designed and refined by a master, like a luxury item. There is no trace of the Kamar-Taj standard at all. It seems that this goblin is quite good in both aesthetics and craftsmanship, at least better than many ordinary wizards. Later, he can let him refine some of his own items. Lockhart thought secretly and decided to add a burden to his future subordinate. Well, Lockhart has always loved beautiful things. Since he knows that his future subordinates have good skills and aesthetics, he will naturally not be polite. Of course, the premise is Bruno, open your mind and sign the contract. Lockhart waved his wand and outlined a large number of light golden lines in the air. Soon, a light golden rune pattern emerged and floated towards Bruno. Chapter 157 Imitation of Gold Galleon. Bruno floated in the air, carefully looking at the snake head. Especially when he saw the basilisk staring at him with its eyes, its tongue constantly emerging, as if it was looking at how he tasted, plus the hissing sound of the snake. He felt creepy, and it seemed that most of his strength was drained. He was so scared that he quickly looked away. However, Bruno looked stunned. What did he see? Grey trees, grey streets, grey houses, everything was grey, and there was no one. It was like hell. Only his alchemy hut, as well as the basilisk and wizard in front of him, had a realistic color. Seeing this scene, after thinking for a moment, he looked at Lockhart with even more fear. He had heard that powerful wizards could open up temporary space for fighting. Although he didn't know what the so-called temporary space was, he thought it should be similar to what he saw. No wonder the door key didn't work. Then, he heard what Lockhart said. Seeing this, Bruno, who had always been sincere, accepted the magic contract very obediently. After seeing this, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. It's good to have soft bones, but if it's really hard bones, it will be more difficult. He can't always cast the Imperious Curse. Besides, it's good for the goblin to maintain half of its state under the Imperious Curse. The thought flashed through his mind, and Lockhart said in a cold voice, Bruno, after signing the magic contract, you will be my subordinate. You only need to remember one thing. What I say, you do. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Bruno nodded again, indicating that he understood everything. Then, like a lackey, he said in a flattering tone, Sir, why don't you go back to my alchemy hut first? I have collected a lot of magic items before. Take a look. If you need it, feel free to take it. Looking at Bruno with a sincere face, Lockhart nodded slightly, looked at the alchemy hut below, which was nearly half collapsed, and waved his wand. Restore it to its original state. As the spell was recited, powerful magic rushed out from the wand, covering the entire alchemy hut. Soon, under Bruno's gaze, the fragments of the house, which were mostly wreckage, seemed to have reversed time, floating again and reassembled into their original appearance. Even the magic patterns and runes on the house were restored to their original state, as if they had not been broken at all. Seeing this, Bruno became more sincere, lowered his eyebrows and looked docile, as if he was a servant that Lockhart called casually. He had seen the restoration spell and used it before, but this was the first time he had seen a restoration spell that could restore magic patterns and magic runes to their original state. It was enough to show how powerful this master was. Lockhart saw the alchemy hut restored to its original appearance, nodded slightly, called the basilisk, shrank its body, and slowly landed on the ground. Seeing this, Bruno also began to land on the ground. After Lockhart landed on the ground, he looked at the basilisk that had returned to the size of an ordinary snake and reached out his hand. The basilisk climbed up very skillfully, all the way to Lockhart's shoulder, and rubbed Lockhart's cheek intimately. Lockhart kissed and stroked the basilisk's head, then stepped into the alchemy hut and released the mirror space at the same time. Bruno followed behind. In an instant, he found that the original black and white colors disappeared quietly. The rustling sound of the leaves in the wind and the cries of birds and beasts once again reached his ears, which made Bruno relax. God knows how big the psychological impact was when he saw the grey sky and earth just now. Looking at Lockhart walking in front, Bruno quickly increased his speed, ran to the front, and opened the door for his future master. He was afraid that some of his actions would annoy this powerful black wizard. Well, although he felt that his master's face was a little familiar, he didn't think much about it. After all, who else can raise such a big python, except a black wizard? Bruno, don't take these out anymore, they are useless to me. Lockhart saw the scattered magic items in front of him and ordered Bruno, who was standing next to him. He himself is an alchemist, and with the essence of absorbing the two worlds, his level is not too bad. What's more, he just dropped Bella's vault, which contains many top magic items. Bruno took out these magic items. Although they looked good, they were really of no help to him. After hearing Lockhart's instructions, Bruno's eyes flashed with surprise, and he quickly packed them up and put them into the space extension bag. If the loss can be reduced, it is natural to reduce the loss. These magic items were made by him with great effort. If it were not for a good treatment in the future, he would not be willing to take them out. Then, Bruno heard. "Bruno, you are a fairy alchemist, right?" Lockhart asked. "Sir, if you mean a certified alchemist, then I'm not." After hearing this, Bruno quickly replied. However, seeing Lockhart's puzzled expression, he continued to explain, "My lord, this is the case. The alchemy masters recognized by the wizarding world have basically published papers in the Philosopher's Stone, or made groundbreaking research results. And I can't be called an alchemy master, because I don't have any outstanding results." Bruno saw Lockhart frown after listening, and then immediately added, "However, my lord, my personal alchemy level is definitely not lower than those alchemy masters. I can even be sure that my level is higher than that of ordinary alchemy masters. Moreover, I'm very experienced in counterfeiting certain magic items or forgeries." At the end, Bruno felt a little uneasy, fearing that he would be proven to be abandoned by the Dark Wizard because he did not have enough value. Lockhart was a little disappointed when he heard Bruno say that he was not an alchemy master. However, when he heard Bruno talk about his alchemy level, especially his strengths, he felt his eyes brighten. This major is a match. After thinking for a while, Lockhart asked Bruno, "In that case, tell me, how much do you know about galleons? If I asked you to imitate them, what effect can you achieve?" "Are galleons?" Bruno exclaimed in surprise, thought about it, and smiled bitterly. "Sir, I won't hide it from you. I've thought about imitating galleons before. But the problem is, I know the material formula, I also know the refining techniques, and I can even imitate the anti-counterfeiting technology to a large extent." "But," Bruno said helplessly here, "if other materials are used instead, the refined gold galleons may be similar, but ordinary wizards can find clues through magical senses, as long as they are careful. And the goblins in Gringotts are more familiar with this, and can easily identify the problem. If other materials are not used instead, use the original materials to refine gold galleons. The more you refine, the more you lose. At this point, Bruno's eyes flashed with some regret, and he said, the group of goblins in Gringotts not only monopolizes the raw materials, and with a large number of goblin laborers, plus refining factories, the cost is greatly reduced. If I were to refine it, I would use at least 3 gold galleons of materials to refine one. It's really too much of a loss. What's more, Gringotts gold galleon anti-counterfeiting technology is not bad. So, I gave up later. Hearing this, Lockhart thought for a while and said lightly, Bruno, if I can provide raw materials at a very low cost, can you refine gold galleons in large quantities? As he said, Lockhart emphasized heavily, what I require is the kind of gold galleons that can be hidden from the goblins in Gringotts. Tonight, there will be 2 more chapters updated, one at 6 o'clock and one at 8 o'clock, with an extra chapter for the leader. Chapter 158 Reply to Fans. Hogsmeade, Alchemy Hut. Bruno, collect some materials for refining gold galleons these days. You can practice making 1 or 2 for me. In 10 days, will you go with me to a place and do something for me? Lockhart looked at the goblin Bruno next to him and said in a deep voice. Then, he waved his wand and a space extension bag floated in front of Bruno, saying, since you are working under me, you will be rewarded if you do well, and punished if you don't do well. Here are 100 gold galleons. Do what I ask you to do, and the rest are your rewards. If you can't do it well, you can play with the little snake. Hearing what Lockhart said, Bruno recalled the huge python just now, and shuddered all over. He nodded quickly and assured, don't worry, sir, I will do it for you. Don't worry about what I do, I'm always safe and sound. Hearing this, Lockhart suddenly thought of something and warned, also, keep your mouth shut. Don't mention my affairs, especially in front of other female fairies. As for the consequences of disobeying, Lockhart didn't say, but Bruno understood and nodded quickly. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly. He didn't forget how he got Bruno's information. It was because this guy was showing off in bed. If he didn't get a shot in advance, who knows what kind of trouble would happen later. Bruno, take a good look at this book and learn about the runes mentioned in it. Lockhart took out a book of his own rune experience and handed it to Bruno, reminding him, the magic boots you wore before were made by using runes. Study it slowly by yourself. If you study well, I promise you a bright future in the future. Hearing Lockhart's reminder, Bruno suddenly said, sir, it turns out that this pair of magic boots was made by you. I thought so. No wonder it is so wonderful. It is simply a masterpiece. I'm afraid that even Nicomel. Hearing Bruno's series of flattery, Lockhart was a little speechless and interrupted directly. Okay, the things have been told to you. Do it well. If you have any problems, find the gold coins. The gold coins will tell me your problems. Understood, sir. I will contact your house elf gold coins after I finish the things you told me to do. Bruno nodded quickly. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly, waved his wand, and opened a space portal. He stepped in and disappeared in an instant. Bruno collapsed to the ground when he saw Lockhart disappear. God knows how much psychological pressure he had just faced a typical dark wizard. He was afraid that he would say something wrong and be fed to the basilisk by the other party. After a long time, Bruno, who gradually recovered his strength, stood up and opened the space extension bag in his hand. Looking at the familiar golden light, his eyes showed joy, and he murmured to himself, it seems that this lord is quite generous. But why does he look more and more familiar? It seems that I should have seen him recently. Where? Suddenly, Bruno's pupils shrank. He remembered that the person just now was the professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts. Hogwarts, defense against the dark arts office. After dealing with the goblin Bruno, Lockhart went straight back to his office. Sitting in his chair, he thought about the arrangements for the next period of time. There are still 10 days before returning to the Marvel world. At that time, I'm afraid I will have to be busy. He has to find an opportunity to improve his strength to deal with future crises. Now he and the Pureblood family are basically facing each other. The struggle will only become more and more intense. Strength is the premise to guarantee everything. His current strength is not weak, but it is still far behind those old monsters behind the pureblood families. Lockhart pondered in his heart and constantly improved his inner plan. The next day, in Lockhart's office, Lockhart sat in front of the desk, with a thick stack of envelopes beside him. These are basically letters sent by Lockhart's fans. In the past few days, the number of letters sent has been particularly large, because their favorite idol Lockhart was slandered. This made many witches indignant, and they wrote letters to comfort him and expressed their support for Lockhart. At the same time, they condemned Rita Skeeter. Well, Lockhart said that, if there were no aphrodisiacs in the middle, the reading experience would be better. Pick up a letter at random, open it, and simply read the contents of the letter. It turned out to be another letter of consolation and condemnation. He controlled the feather pen and wrote quickly, "Dear Witchekala, thank you for your concern. Although I feel uncomfortable, because I was slandered for no reason. But I believe that many wizards have sharp eyes, and white cannot become black, because of the other party's slander. I'm very confident in my research results, and I believe that the Daily Prophet will not allow reporters like Rita Skeeter who can only distort the facts to make unfounded reports. As for your mention of wanting to teach a lesson, I personally think it is unnecessary." Lockhart put himself in the position of an innocent person who was accidentally slandered and replied. His attitude was very gentle, and he even comforted the readers in return, saying that they should be broad-minded and not get angry because of the casual slander of such a villain. Well, in fact, Lockhart knew that if he wanted to use his fan base to provoke a fight, the effect would be very significant. At least Rita Skeeter might not even be able to leave the house in a short period of time and could only travel through the magic closet. But Lockhart would never do this, which would undoubtedly consume his reputation and influence. On the contrary, his reply was not only to build up his hopes. At the same time, it was also a preparation for the subsequent plan. Since Rita Skeeter has become his subordinate now, it would be a waste if he doesn't make good use of her. The Daily Prophet, Editor-in-Chief Cotton's office. Editor-in-Chief, Rita Skeeter has written another article. How should we deal with it? Still put it on the headline like last time. Editor Bobby raised the manuscript in his hand and asked Editor-in-Chief Cotton, who was sitting on the chair, "Let me take a look first." Cotton took the manuscript from Bobby and slowly read it with his head down. After reading it, Editor-in-Chief Cotton fell into deep thought, and suddenly, he looked up and asked Bobby, "Bobby, is there any movement at Hogwarts? For example, someone wrote to the Daily Prophet, or issued some announcements?" Bobby thought for a moment and shook his head. Editor-in-Chief, "No, it seems that nothing has happened at Hogwarts. Professor Lockhart, it seems that there is no impact, and he continues to teach." In that case, Editor-in-Chief Cotton hesitated for a moment and continued, "Then send it out, and give it a headline position." Chapter 159 Snape's Irony. Hogwarts, Snape's office. "Snape, I feel that as wizards, we still need some sunshine. Staying in a dim office all day will only make you feel more depressed. Look at my office. Every day when the golden sunshine shines on me, I feel very comfortable." Lockhart looked at Snape's dim office and said jokingly, "Does your comfort come from being scolded by the newspaper every day?" Snape raised the Daily Prophet in his hand and said sarcastically. As he said that, Snape even picked up the newspaper and read a few sentences. According to reporters' investigations, Gilderoy Lockhart's letters to female fans contain some aphrodisiac ingredients. Although the dosage is not large, it shows that this person has a bad character and despicable means. However, Lockhart was not annoyed when he heard it. Instead, he said with a smile, "Fame brings trouble. If it weren't for the jealousy of my achievements, no one would scold me." Although Rita Skeeter distorted the direction and said that the letters from fans to me were my replies to fans. But the letters from fans to me contain aphrodisiac ingredients. Doesn't this just show that I'm very charming? You are really good at talking. Snape laughed sarcastically. "Then how do you explain this sentence in the report?" As he spoke, Snape continued to read the newspaper. Gilderoy Lockhart said before that he is very confident in his research results. It only takes the final squib test to promote it publicly. What we are wondering is, where does his confidence come from? Is it mentioned in the previous results he obtained, or does he experiment on little wizards in private? After reading this, Snape showed a smile, as if watching a play, as if he was watching how Lockhart would answer. In response, Lockhart said helplessly, "Okay, Snape, I developed the meditation method, and Headmaster Dumbledore has also said it is safe. Besides, I didn't take the initiative to find the little wizards to do the experiment." At this point, Lockhart changed the subject directly and said, "Snape, let's not talk about this. I came here today to ask, how are the potions you ordered before turning out? If it's almost the same, you can pay today." When he heard that he would pay directly, Snape's attention was indeed diverted. He put down the newspaper, pondered for a moment and said, "Most of the potions have been successfully refined, and you can get them at any time. Some of them will probably take 3 or 4 days. In terms of cost, excluding the deposit of 200 gold galleons, there are still 800 gold galleons left." Lockhart nodded and praised. When he heard this, "You are worthy of being a potion master. Your efficiency is really fast enough. Here are 800 gold galleons. Keep them." As he said that, Lockhart handed Snape a space extension bag. After Snape took it, he casually placed it on the desk behind him and chatted as if tentatively, "Lockhart, how long will it take to use so many precious potions you purchased this time? If you need me to refine new potions later, I can prepare them in advance." Lockhart naturally heard the meaning of Snape's words. After thinking for a while, he said, "Snape, any time is fine. Let's follow the previous list of potions. I'll take as much as you refine. Gold galleons are not a problem." Hearing this, Snape seemed to have a hint of meaning and said, "Lockhart, the quantity this time may be enough for hundreds of people to use for half a month. Are you sure you need to continue refining?" "Of course." Lockhart nodded affirmatively. "Don't worry, I'll take as much as you refine, and the price remains unchanged." After thinking about it, he explained, "Snape, my clients are not in the British wizarding world. Besides, they are all white wizards. Don't worry, I generally don't trade with black wizards. They are too risky." After hearing Lockhart's explanation, Snape did not continue asking. Although he felt that Lockhart was very likely to be related to other wizarding forces, and even provided potions specifically for them. However, what did this have to do with him? He was just curious and asked. After all, he made potions to sell. As long as the price was right, it didn't matter who he sold them to. As long as it was not provided to the Dark Lord, it didn't matter. What's more, Lockhart's generosity and high prices, especially the large-scale orders, made him earn a lot of gold galleons. Moreover, looking at what Lockhart did, he was probably not on good terms with that group of purebloods. While Snape was thinking, Lockhart asked, "Snape, I'll have to trouble you to make some potions recently, mainly for squibs, to help them meditate smoothly. It's roughly similar to a palliative. It should be lighter, just to ensure that they have no distracting thoughts. If the potion is too strong, I'm afraid they won't be able to meditate." Hearing this, Snape nodded readily and said, "No problem, this is simple. I will try my best to reduce the effect of the potion." Then, he asked, "When will you use it?" Lockhart roughly estimated that Veritaserum report was almost ready, so he said, "About these few days." After hearing this, Snape nodded to show that he understood. Dumbledore also talked to him about what Lockhart did. He also knew what impact Lockhart's actions would have. However, he was not interested in getting involved. In his life, he wanted nothing else except revenge. At most, he could protect Harry and survive. Hogwarts, the principal's office. Professor McGonagall, wearing a dark green wizard robe, looked at Dumbledore, who was sitting at the desk with a worried look on her face. She opened the Daily Prophet in her hand and said, "Albus, now Rita Skeeter's report has begun to slander Hogwarts. Are you sure you won't intervene?" As she said that, she opened the newspaper and pointed to a series of words for Dumbledore to see. "There is no doubt that Hogwarts is irresponsible. Gilderoy Lockhart directly recruited test subjects in the name of Hogwarts. Hogwarts did not stop it at all, and even encouraged it. All of our families send their little wizards to Hogwarts with full trust, and Hogwarts' approach makes it hard for people not to doubt whether they will use the little wizards as test subjects." Dumbledore looked at this series of misleading words and comforted Professor McGonagall. "Minerva, don't worry, these things will be resolved soon. Don't worry." Hearing Dumbledore's comfort, Professor McGonagall could only nod helplessly. She loved Hogwarts from the bottom of her heart, so McGonagall hated this kind of slander. Although, she knew that Dumbledore and Lockhart had countermeasures. Hogsmeade, Rita Skeeter's home. Rita Skeeter sat at the table, thinking back to the past few days, feeling like a dream. She had written a hot report and even gained a lot of fame and gold galleons. At that time, she was very excited. As a result, she was caught by the protagonist of the report the next day. This made her fall from heaven to hell. What's worse is that this Lockhart is a dark wizard with extremely cruel methods. When she thought of the huge basilisk next to Lockhart and the torture brought by the magic contract, Rita wanted to slap herself. She was really blind, and she actually reported a vengeful dark wizard. Even if she reported Dumbledore's black material, it wouldn't be so miserable. When she thought of this, Rita had a strong resentment towards Lockhart. The wizard who looks handsome and is loved by many witches is actually a dark wizard behind the scenes. Who would have thought? What she never expected was that after being caught, Lockhart actually asked him to continue writing reports that slandered him. This made her stunned on the spot, and later through Lockhart's explanation, she understood the inside story. Immediately, Rita Skeeter labeled him again, insidious and cunning. Well, the vindictive, ruthless, insidious and cunning dark wizard Lockhart. While she was thinking about it, suddenly, buzz, with a flash of light, a figure teleported in front of her. It was the house elf gold coin. Miss Skeeter, the master asked me to tell you. The plan has started. Today's 6 updates are completed. Chapter 160 Squibion's Revenge Plan. In the morning, Hogsmeade, the Hog's Head. Squibion Norton is a waiter at the Hog's Head. Generally speaking, many wizards are unwilling to do such a service job. Most of the time, it is the squibs who serve many wizards. And the squibs, who are obsessed with magic, have no objection to this. In order to get further in touch with magic, at this moment, Squibion skillfully picked up 2 cups of butterbeer and walked towards a wooden table quickly and steadily. Bang! You two, the butterbeer is here. Ian shouted with a slight collision of beer and the wooden table. Ian, give me a glass of fire whiskey. A wizard not far away shouted skillfully. Okay, wait a minute. Ian replied, returned to the bar, and said to the boss Aberforth Dumbledore, boss, a glass of fire whiskey. Ian was very grateful to his boss. Before, he was born in a better wizard family. Both his parents were wizards, and he was just a squib. When he found out that he was a squib, he was very depressed and desperate for a time. He was confused for a while. He came to the Pig's Head bar every day to drink and drown his sorrows, and got to know the boss here. Although the boss expressed sympathy for his situation, he still collected the money he should have. He didn't care. He just wanted to use alcohol to make himself forget that he was a squib. Later, his parents died. He was the only one in the family. Without a source of income, he almost starved to death. If the boss hadn't taken him in and let him work as a waiter in the bar, he would have been on the street and become a beggar. The death of his parents made him cheer up again, and he cherished the job given to him by the boss. He has worked here for several years, but he is going to leave here. Ian thought apologetically, feeling that doing so was a bit sorry for the care of his boss Aberforth over the years. The reason for leaving was that he had always suspected that the death of his parents was not an accident, but a murder. And he found some traces, although not much, but the desire for revenge had been ignited, and he could no longer hold it back. Although his enemy is likely to be a wizard. However, he is somewhat familiar with the Muggle world, and naturally knows that some Muggle items will increase his probability of killing wizards. For this, he has made a careful plan. Just wait to find out who the enemy is, and then, risk his life to kill the other party and avenge his family. In short, he lives alone in this world, without friends or relatives. Even if he dies, no one will remember him. No, maybe the boss will still have some impression of him. Ian said self-deprecatingly. Ian, the fire whiskey is ready. Aberforth Dumbledore, the owner of the Hog's Head, handed over the wine glass and said gently. The wine glass was filled with blue liquor, and a bright flame was burning on it. It was the fire whiskey. Ian, who came to his senses, immediately came over. When the call was okay, he turned around and walked towards the guests with the fire whiskey. Ms. Hiran, the fire whiskey is here. Ian put the glass on the table and said to the familiar witch in front of him. Amber Heron picked up the fire whiskey and teased the handsome guy in front of him. Ian, I love fire whiskey the most. As she said that, Heron took a sip. You should hiss. Heron took a breath and sprayed a ball of heat from her mouth. Then he continued, taste the bursting feeling of the fire whiskey in your mouth. I guarantee you will like it very much, Ian. Then, he changed the subject directly and said, okay, Miss Helen, do you want some other food to go with it? We have steak here, no need. Helen shook her head and interrupted, just give me another glass of fire whiskey. I like this taste. Okay, Miss Helen. Ian said readily. After a while, Ian brought another glass of fire whiskey and placed it in front of Helen. Turning around and preparing to leave. Suddenly Ian, do you want to be a wizard? In an instant, Helen's words attracted Ian's attention back. Looking at Ian, who turned around, Hiram said with a smile, Ian, didn't you read today's Daily Prophet? That's what you are talking about. Ian replied helplessly, I read the newspapers in the past few days. One moment it says Professor Lockhart can make a squib become a wizard, and the next moment it says it's a scam. I don't know whether I should believe it or not. No. Hiram smiled and shook his head and said, today's Daily Prophet is different from what you said just now. I know you didn't read it. As he said that, Hiram took out a copy of the Daily Prophet and opened it to Ian so that he could see the most eye-catching headline. Shocking news. Squibs successfully perform magic, shaking the newspaper. Hiram said proudly. Professor Lockhart announced in the newspaper that there has been a successful case. It will be shown to everyone at Hogwarts tomorrow morning. All wizards and squibs are welcome to go to Hogwarts to watch. If it is true, Ian, you may really become a wizard in the future. At this point, Hiram looked at Ian's handsome face, and a different color flowed in his eyes. At this moment, Ian did not hear what Hiram said later. His eyes were only focused on this newspaper. If it really can make him a wizard, then his revenge plan will be more successful, and it can satisfy the regrets of his life. When he thought of this, Ian's eyes burst into a hot flame. Is it desire, revenge, or something else? Hogwarts, the principal's office. Thank you, principal, for allowing me to borrow the venue of Hogwarts to announce this shocking news to the entire wizarding world. Lockhart looked at Dumbledore and said with gratitude. After hearing this, Dumbledore stroked his snow white beard with a smile and said with a face full of reminiscence, Lockhart, not long ago, I remember you mentioned a sentence that I liked very much. I remember that sentence was, I used to be proud of Hogwarts, and I hope that in the future I will have the opportunity to make Hogwarts proud of me. Now it seems that tomorrow, you will be able to do this, and let the squib successfully cast magic and become wizards. This has been a difficult problem in the wizarding world for thousands of years. Your contribution is enough to make you a mark in the history of magic. At the same time, Hogwarts will be proud to be able to cultivate a student like you. At this point, Dumbledore changed the subject and said meaningfully, I hope that this matter can continue, and Hogwarts in the future will still be proud of you. Thanks to Match's Little Cheese, Zinchenj, Zrenk, Yakoi Madanksinkson, Momo, Book Friend 201807100739444448, and Kyan Kianxiaxia for voting for the monthly ticket. Chapter 161 Lockhart, Pureblood families will support us. Hogwarts, Quidditch Stadium. Today's Quidditch Stadium is very lively. A large number of wizards came to the stadium and sat in the audience seats around them, looking at the high platform rising from the lawn in the middle. Most of the wizards sitting in the front are pureblood families. Those sitting in the back are half-blood wizards and squibs. The levels are very clear, and their status is also very obvious. Sitting in the front, you can see the wizards most clearly, either with no expression, or with a very ugly face, as if someone robbed them of their money. The further back you sit, the better your face is, and even reveal an excited and expectant look. Time passed by minute, and more wizards sat in the audience seats, and the stadium began to slowly become noisy. Squibs become wizards. This is a problem in the wizarding world for thousands of years. I didn't expect that we could actually witness this scene. It's worth bragging about in the future. Haha, you're right. We'll have something to talk about when we drink in the future. The two wizards sitting in the back brought up a topic, and the wizards next to them also began to join the discussion. Then it gradually spread to the front. After hearing this, the pureblood family member sitting in front snorted coldly, then frowned and looked at the high platform opposite, wondering what he was thinking. "Lucius, it seems that your method has no effect," Kane Parkinson, who is also a member of the school board, joked. After hearing this, Lucius replied lightly, "I didn't intend to rely solely on public opinion to win. I just put some pressure on Dumbledore and others. It's no big deal if you fail. There will be many opportunities in the future." "Oh." Kane suddenly became interested. "Can we chat? Is there anyone who needs help from the Parkinson family?" He knew that Lucius was a man who was quite reliable in his words. Since he dared to say it, it meant that he really had a plan. After hearing this, Lucius smiled and said, "There are indeed some things that require everyone's cooperation. It really can't be done by relying solely on the Malfoy family." Hearing what Lucius said, Kane's smile became even bigger. So, Lucius really has a plan. At this moment, Lockhart was in the backstage of Quidditch. These were originally places for Quidditch players to rest or prepare. But now, Lockhart and some Hogwarts professors gathered together to discuss some things. Filch, the Hogwarts caretaker, who was sitting opposite, looked a little nervous. He became very excited and grateful to Professor Lockhart after he found that he could successfully perform magic. So, when he saw someone slandering Professor Lockhart in the newspaper, he immediately ran to Lockhart's office with the newspaper and said that he could testify for him. As a result, Professor Lockhart told him not to worry. What? Let the bullet fly for a while. Although he didn't understand what it meant, he kept listening to his orders because of his trust in Lockhart. And now, hearing the constant discussions of the people around him, he slowly began to understand the meaning of Professor Lockhart's words, "Let the bullet fly for a while." This made him even more excited, especially when he thought about what he was going to do later. He was trembling with excitement. Suddenly, "Relax, Filch. Believe in yourself." Professor Lockhart's comforting voice came to his ears. Filch nodded subconsciously and said quickly, "Okay, Professor, I will relax." Hearing what Filch said, Lockhart looked at Filch, who was still nervous and his calves were trembling. After thinking for a while, he waved his wand, and a light yellow light enveloped Filch. Filch immediately felt relieved and relaxed. At least his calves did not tremble anymore. Then, he heard Professor Lockhart say, "Filch, I suggest you try meditation. It can quickly calm you down and better prepare for what will happen later." "Okay, Professor." Filch nodded quickly and began to meditate with his eyes closed according to Lockhart's instructions. Professor Flitwick, who was standing next to him, saw this scene and smiled at Lockhart. "Lockhart, after today, you will become the hope in the eyes of many squibs. What are you going to do next?" Hearing Professor Flitwick's question, Lockhart glanced at Filch, who was listening with his ears perked up, and spoke slowly. "My next plan is not complicated. It is to further promote meditation in the wizarding world. Not only let the squibs learn it, but also let the wizards start to learn it. Let our wizarding world become more prosperous and flourishing." After listening to this, Professor Flitwick praised, "You are still Lockhart. You are young and motivated. I believe you can do it." Then he said self-deprecatingly, "Middle-aged wizards like me no longer have this kind of motivation. In this life, I will just stay in Hogwarts to teach and train some young wizards. I will be content." "Dean, look at what you said." Lockhart smiled and said, "I will have to trouble you for help with many things in the future. I mentioned to Principal Dumbledore before that when the meditation method is officially promoted, Hogwarts will also recruit squibs. I will have to trouble you then." "Really?" Professor Flitwick was a little surprised. Will Dumbledore really recruit squibs? As the Dean of Ravenclaw, he knew that a lot of funding for Hogwarts now came from the board of directors, that is, the pureblood families. If squibs are really admitted in the future, the demand for funds will increase significantly. Based on this alone, the school board will most likely not compromise. Not to mention, if the meditation method is really implemented in Hogwarts, the impact on the pureblood families will undoubtedly double. If there is no fuss at that time, there will be problems. After thinking about it, he decided to remind Lockhart. Lockhart, the matter of recruiting squibs must be negotiated with the school board later. Don't forget who are the people in the school board. After hearing this, Lockhart smiled meaningfully and said, "Don't worry, Professor Flitwick. Maybe the pureblood families will support us at that time." Hearing what Lockhart said, Professor Flitwick was a little confused. But seeing that Lockhart didn't want to continue explaining, he didn't ask any more questions. These things are too complicated. It's better to leave it to smart people like Dumbledore and Lockhart. If he handles it, he still likes to use the wand to have a clean and neat battle to solve all problems. Soon, Professor Flitwick continued to discuss this operation with Lockhart. This time, he had to appear with Lockhart, and some details had to be checked. Don't let some embarrassing scenes happen. That would be embarrassing to the whole world. Professor Flitwick had no doubt that today's event would definitely spread throughout the wizarding world. Chapter 162, Squib Filch's Spellcasting. The sunshine in autumn is always the most pleasant. The warm sunshine sprinkled on the body, with the breeze, it was so pleasant. On the Quidditch field of Hogwarts, a large number of wizards and squibs gathered together. The heat emitted by them, and the autumn wind, no matter how they blew, did not achieve the effect of cooling down. But all the wizards didn't care, and their eyes were all focused on the high platform in the middle of the lawn. Because the event they were looking forward to was about to begin. Suddenly, dark clouds covered the sky, and it was dark, which made many wizards doubtful. But they didn't worry too much. After all, this was Hogwarts. And sitting in the front was Dumbledore, a recognized strong man in the wizarding world. Then, under the gaze of everyone, buzz, a light golden beam of light broke through the dark clouds and shone directly on the high platform in the middle of the lawn. In the middle of the light beam, 3 figures quietly emerged. Following the light beam, the 3 people walked up to the high platform step by step. What surprised them even more was that along with the light golden beam of light quietly emerged, above the sky, a huge magic projection caught the eyes of all wizards. The projection happened to show 3 figures walking in the light golden beam. They were all very familiar with these 3 figures. What shocked them was not the 2 professors, Lockhart and Flitwick, who were at the back. It was the one walking in front, the well-known Hogwarts caretaker, Filch. This surprised the wizards who were watching the projection, and then they suddenly realized. Basically, the senior Hogwarts students knew that Filch was a squib and did not know magic. But according to the theme of today's event, they knew that the protagonist was the Hogwarts caretaker Filch. Soon, a group of 3 people landed on the platform. Filch stood in the middle, and Professors Lockhart and Flitwick stood beside him. At this moment, Lockhart looked at the huge magic projection floating in the sky and nodded with satisfaction. Then, he waved his wand, causing the dark clouds in the sky to gradually dissipate, and the light golden beam that was used to focus the attention of all wizards also disappeared quietly, and the magic projection was still in the eyes of all wizards in the audience. Then, Lockhart took up his wand and pointed it at his throat, casting a silent amplification spell to ensure that his voice covered the entire Quidditch pitch. Dear gentlemen and ladies. No, I should change the title. Dear wizards and future wizards, welcome to participate in this event and witness together that the 1000-year-old problem of the wizarding world has been solved by us. As Lockhart's voice fell, the squibs sitting in the back of the audience applauded violently, venting their excitement. The wizards were also moved by the fierce applause, and even the pureblood wizards sitting at the front desk clapped gently according to etiquette. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, the entire Quidditch pitch was filled with applause. Today is destined to be a day that will be remembered in the history of magic. Because, from today on, we will officially embrace the largest group in the wizarding world, the squibs. They will enjoy the beauty of magic with us. And we will no longer have to worry about whether our children can become wizards. Because there will be no more squibs in the wizarding world, and everyone will have the opportunity to become a wizard. Hearing this, many wizards and witches with families began to cheer, and some even cried with joy. You know, before their children are 12 years old, there is still hope for their bloodline awakening. But after the age of 12, it basically means that their children have fallen to the bottom of the wizarding world. Squibs. This is a heavy blow to any wizard family. And Lockhart, through his eyes, that had already cast a spell in advance, observed that the pureblood wizard sitting in front of him looked bad. But he didn't care. What he said just now had successfully aroused the emotions of most wizards in the audience. After all, squibs are eager to cast magic, and wizards also hope that their children will become wizards in the future. I know that the reports from the past few days may have caused some wizards to be confused, but I believe that everything will change after today. Now, please welcome our protagonist this time, Argus Filch. At the same time, Filch waved his hand to greet everyone, and waved his wand. Under Lockhart's conscious control, a large close-up appeared on the magic projection. Professor Flitwick next to him saw it, and knew that it was his turn to go on stage. He also pointed his wand at his throat and spoke loudly. Filch, I believe all the wizards present have seen him. Since I became a professor at Hogwarts, I have taught many young wizards, and Filch has also welcomed many young wizards. Basically, senior students know that Filch has always been eager to learn magic, but due to his own conditions, he has not achieved any results despite his hard work. But it's different now. After Professor Lockhart's research results and the teaching of all our professors, Filch is now able to cast magic. Although he is old, he can now be called a wizard. Professor Flitwick turned to Filch and said, Filch, let everyone see how you cast a spell. As he said that, Professor Flitwick reached out and took out a small box from the space extension belt. When he opened the box, there were 3 Quidditch balls in it. They were the Quaffle, the Bludger, and the Golden Snitch. Seeing this, Lockhart controlled the magic projection to display the 3 Quidditch balls in front of many wizards. Seeing the very familiar Quidditch balls, all wizards looked expectant. Wingardium Leviosa. Filch insisted, waving his wand very skillfully and chanting the spell loudly. First, he aimed at the bright red football-sized Quaffle. All wizards could clearly see through the magic projection that a pale white light floated at the tip of Filch's wand. Although it was weak, it hit the Quaffle directly. In the eyes of everyone, the Quaffle slowly floated up, and as Filch waved his wand, the Quaffle also moved slowly. The wizards in the audience, especially the squibs, screamed loudly. The door of their dreams seemed to be opening towards them, and Lockhart naturally focused the projection on Filch. After a demonstration, Filch controlled the Quaffle to return to the box. Then, under the gaze of many wizards, Filch took out a magic broom. Right on it, and Professor Flitwick controlled the second bludger in the box to fly into the sky. Seeing this scene, the wizards in the audience showed their expectations. Sure enough, under the gaze of many wizards, Filch flew up on his magic broom. Although it was visible to the naked eye that the magic broom was trembling a little when it flew, and it couldn't even fly very far. But seeing a squib riding a magic broom into the sky, with a bludger beside him, still made me feel very excited. As a wizard, in addition to having his own wand, the biggest feature is that he can ride a magic broom and fly. Although wizards who can't use magic brooms will not be despised, they will also feel extremely embarrassed. This scene not only made the squibs excited, but also made the wizards feel a little friendly. After a while, Filch controlled the magic broom to slowly land, and Lockhart set his sights on the third golden snitch, with a glimmer of expectation in his eyes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163, The Split of a Pureblood Family. The Golden Snitch is the most important ball in Quidditch. It is a metal ball about the size of a walnut, with wings made of silver. It flies very fast, and is difficult to catch. But any Quidditch player who catches it will have a huge advantage in the game. At this moment, Lockhart's eyes are on the Golden Snitch. There are 3 Quidditch balls in the box, each with its own use. The first one, the Quaffle, shows that Filch can cast spells smoothly. The second one, the Bludger, shows that Filch can use magic items. And the third one, Lockhart focused his eyes on Filch. Looking at Filch, he waved his wand and slowly but powerfully drew a series of light golden lines in the air. Soon, in the eyes of many wizards, a simple rune pattern floated in the air. They were a little confused, wondering what Filch was doing. But when the rune was completely formed, a light golden circular energy shield emerged out of thin air. At the same time, at the moment, when the rune was about to form, Professor Flitwick cooperated very well and released the golden snitch, controlling him to fly around the rune. As a result, the golden snitch flew around in the energy shield, as if trapped. The unique way of casting spells, coupled with the different effects of casting spells, surprised all the wizards. Most of them were used to chanting spells loudly, and it was rare to draw rune patterns like this. Only some powerful wizards or purebloods would have similar magic. Soon, under the gaze of everyone, the light golden energy shield disappeared, and the golden snitch quietly returned to the box. Lockhart stood on the high platform and used magic to let his voice cover the entire Quidditch field. Wizards and future wizards, you have seen that Filch has become a wizard. He is no longer a squib. In the future, there will be more squibs who will cast magic like Filch, ride on magic brooms, and become wizards. I believe that the word squib will completely disappear in the near future. Our family, our friends, as long as they are willing to work hard, can become wizards. Hearing Lockhart's impassioned tone, the squibs in the audience became more and more excited, shouting and screaming one after another. Some squibs even cried with excitement. It was like a patient with advanced cancer who suddenly received news that there was still hope for his cancer to be cured. That kind of excitement was enough to make people cry with joy. Then, Lockhart continued. Seeing this scene, there should be no doubt about the authenticity of my research results. Next, we will randomly select some wizards and future wizards in the audience. If you have any questions about my research results, you can ask them. As he said, Lockhart waved his wand. A light golden beam of light appeared in the sky again, moving continuously in the audience. After seeing it, many wizards naturally understood its meaning and expected the beam of light to fall on themselves. Soon, the attention stopped moving and fell on a middle-aged wizard. Congratulations to this wizard. Do you have any questions? The middle-aged wizard pointed his wand at his throat and asked curiously. Professor Lockhart, may I ask if the method of making a squib become a wizard is not helpful for wizards, or does it only work on squibs? Of course it will help. Lockhart replied affirmatively. The method I studied is called meditation. In short, it is to improve mental strength and magic power through meditation. So squibs become wizards after meditation. And wizards can also improve their mental strength and magic power after practice. This is most helpful for squibs, but it also has a good effect on wizards. After hearing Lockhart's introduction, all wizards suddenly realized it. Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. Well, it's better to find someone in advance, so that all problems are within the controllable range. No weird questions will be asked. When he thought of the bold questions raised by some witches in the letter, Lockhart felt a little scared. If he asked them on the spot, if he ran into a hostile pureblood family, it would be even more troublesome. With a flash of thought, Lockhart controlled the light column to move again. This time, the light column fell in front of a young squib. Excuse me, what is your question? Lockhart asked, waving his wand and casting a sound amplification spell on the other party. The magic projection also reflected the other party's face. Professor Lockhart, I'm a squib. I want to ask, can this method of making squibs become wizards be popularized? Will it cost a lot of gold galleons? The squib asked nervously. The squib's question suddenly brought many wizards and squibs back to reality, and they all looked forward to Lockhart's answer. Of course. Lockhart answered decisively. I have always believed that, if a research cannot benefit most wizards, and can only serve a small number of wizards, its value is limited after all. So, I can clearly reply that it can be popularized, and it will not cost too many gold galleons. Even if you have a certain talent and work hard enough, you can have a certain amount of magic power without spending money. Hearing this, the squib nodded excitedly and said a series of grateful words. After hearing this, Lockhart smiled and comforted him a few words and continued to control the movement of the light column. This time, it fell on a pureblood family. His name is Hanson Avery, and his son is now studying at Hogwarts Slytherin College. At the same time, he is also a pureblood wizard that Lockhart met at the Blackstone auction. Professor Lockhart, I would like to ask, what kind of magic did Filch perform at the end? Why is it different from what we learned before? Hearing Hansen's question, Lockhart nodded slightly and replied, the magic performed by Filch is my own creation. However, it is similar to the principle of meditation, and it can be considered as a magic that is combined with meditation. A squib or wizard who practices meditation can use it. Then, Professor Lockhart, if I'll let my children join your experiment as research assistants, will you teach them these meditation methods, including the magic that is combined? Hansen Avery asked again. Hansen's question directly attracted the attention of many pureblood families. Or rather, Hansen's words caused some dissatisfaction among them. A person from a pureblood family publicly stated that he would send his child to Hogwarts as Lockhart's research assistant. They all knew what this meant. Later, there was no need for Lockhart to promote it. The news that the pureblood families were optimistic about the meditation method would spread like wildfire. Half-blood wizards and even some pureblood families who were interested would join in. Hansen naturally knew what the pureblood family members sitting in front of him were thinking. However, when he thought of Lockhart's promise, he simply ignored it. These guys sucked blood and gnawed flesh after the decline of the Everly family. Under the temptation of reviving the family, what does the dissatisfaction of the pureblood family matter? After hearing this, Lockhart said in a tempting tone, of course, I can promise all wizards here, as my research assistants, not only will there be no danger to their lives, but I will also teach them meditation methods and various self-created magic with all my strength. Let them enjoy the same treatment as Hogwarts students. I have even discussed with Principal Dumbledore that they can be directly arranged to enroll, take exams, and receive certificates. After graduation, they can find jobs like wizards and become aurors. Let them be the first batch of lucky people in the new era. Chapter 164 Make Wizards Great Again. Wow. Lockhart's words seemed to have set off the entire Quidditch field, and many wizards were talking about it. The benefits of being a research assistant are too good, and it can even be said that it is beyond everyone's imagination. You know, the wizarding world now has no accurate technology to judge squibs and wizards. Therefore, it can only be judged by rough methods. That is, before the age of 12, everyone will be regarded as a potential wizard, just waiting for his magic to riot and awaken his bloodline. Only after the age of 12, if there is still no change, will he be regarded as a squib. It can be said that 12 years old is the last deadline. After this age, there is basically no possibility of awakening. Naturally, after becoming a squib, it can basically be said that it is out of the chance to go to Hogwarts. Even if they now have meditation methods, with the age of the squibs, I don't know how many years older than the school age. I'm afraid they can only become an idle wizard. And in the entire wizarding world, except for some basic service jobs that are performed by squibs. For other jobs, everyone will choose the wizards of the academy, that is, the wizards from Hogwarts. It can be said that in the British wizard world, almost all positions that require wizards are filled by wizards from Hogwarts. It is conceivable how troublesome it would be for a wizard who practices alone to live in the wizard world. Of course, such an employment environment is due to the fact that all wizards in the British wizard world are students of Hogwarts. As long as they have wizard qualifications, they will be detected by Hogwarts and then invited. And ordinary wizards will never refuse. Because entering Hogwarts is the best choice to enjoy systematic training. This is equivalent to Hogwarts monopolizing all wizard qualifications in the British wizard world. Such an employment environment will naturally form. And now, what Lockhart said will mean that their older squib children will be able to enjoy the most orthodox education. Even in the future, they can have the identity of Hogwarts and find a decent job like them. It may not matter to some pureblood families, but for ordinary mixed blood wizard families, and even some relatively declining pureblood families, it will be a huge surprise. What's more, they can enjoy the full guidance of Professor Lockhart, the founder of the meditation method. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In an instant, all the families with squibs or pureblood families made the most favorable decision for themselves, to work as research assistants for Lockhart. At this moment, Lockhart saw everyone's eagerness to try, and his mouth curled up. Then, he heard Hansen said loudly, Professor Lockhart, then I will send both of my children to Hogwarts to serve as your research assistants. Okay. You are very welcome. Lockhart replied immediately, However, in order to further test the meditation method, the help for squibs. Currently, only 100 children who are squibs or suspected squibs are recruited. Your child. I will definitely give priority to your child. Hearing Lockhart's reply, Hansen expressed his gratitude and sat down. Of course, he knew that his child would definitely be one of the 100 candidates. He said this just to put pressure on others according to Lockhart's instructions. Afterwards, Lockhart found several suitable candidates to ask questions, fully demonstrating the temptation of meditation and the urgency of time. For example, the first batch of squibs who practiced meditation are likely to be recorded in the history of magic and remembered by everyone, or they may enjoy the dividends of the new era. As such, the more all wizards and squibs listened, the more they felt that the opportunity was not to be missed and the time would not come again. They wished that they would apply as soon as the event was over. Soon, Lockhart controlled the beam of light to fall on a young squib, who was the last person Lockhart planned to ask questions. Professor Lockhart, if we are not selected as research assistants, when can we learn meditation? For us squibs, we are very impatient. After hearing this, Lockhart answered directly. Later, I will write a paper on the research results of meditation and other related papers, and publish them in journals such as the Philosopher's Stone and the Words of Magic. If you are interested, you can buy it directly. It will introduce the meditation method and the precautions for practice. Thank you, Professor Lockhart. I will definitely buy it. Of course, I also hope to learn meditation from you. The young squib replied immediately. Then, he asked again, Professor Lockhart, I personally think that your research results are a great favor to the squibs. But I would like to ask, what do you think is the significance of your research results? In response to the question of the young squib, Lockhart pondered for a moment, as if he was organizing his words. I think the existence of meditation will solve the difficulties faced by our wizard world. Lockhart replied to everyone meaningfully, looking at the puzzled faces of many wizards. He began to wave his wand, sketching a line graph and a large number of numbers in the air. The magic projection also revealed it in front of many wizards. Many wizards looked at a line that fluctuated up and down, but always sloping down, with puzzled faces. Lockhart began to introduce himself directly, as a researcher and writer. In addition to writing books, I also love reading. After joining the Hogwarts professor, the books in the Hogwarts library have enabled me to gain a lot, and also answered a question of mine. You may not be very clear about the difficulties facing the wizarding world that I'm talking about, but look at this line graph and the numbers on it. Through my investigation of the Hogwarts admission record data, I discovered a surprising fact. That is, in the past 100 years, the number of young wizards enrolled has been on a downward trend. Except for the 2 periods of the Dark Lord, the number of admissions has dropped sharply. But the overall number, like the line graph above, has been on a downward trend. At this time, some wizards began to look unhappy, as if they had thought of something. Lockhart analyzed in a calm tone. Next, if the number of new students at Hogwarts keeps decreasing every year, this means that in the future, the number of wizards we can train will become fewer and fewer. It is very likely that when we grow old, the wizarding world will face the crisis of extinction. Unlike Lockhart's calm attitude, most of the wizards present were a little panicked, because the results of their analysis were exactly the same as Lockhart's, especially some pure-blood families, who recalled their family history and had a hint of fear on their faces. Then, Lockhart was heard saying in an insightful tone, and the greatest significance of meditation is here. It allows squibs to become wizards, and the number of wizards will increase suddenly, and the children of wizards and wizards will not be at risk of becoming squibs in the future. As long as they work hard, they will also become wizards. This means that we will break the desperate situation of the declining number of wizards. The number of wizards will not decrease, but will increase. The wizarding world will only become more and more prosperous. At this point, Lockhart seemed to be waving his wand excitedly and said passionately, "This is what I think is the greatest significance of meditation. Let wizards be great again. P.S. I have added more chapters for the leader. Thank you all for your support. Dear readers, Xingchen would like to ask for subscriptions again. I don't know if it is because I have updated a lot recently. The number of subscriptions has been declining recently. It used to be over 1,000 every other day, but now, after a few days, it still has not reached the standard of 1,000, and the average subscription has dropped. It makes me a little frustrated. So, considering how hard I work to update, I beg you to subscribe and support. I beg you to subscribe and support. Chapter 165 Dumbledore, you disappoint me so much. Late at night, Hogwarts. Albus, join us. In a somewhat dim room, an oil lamp was placed on the table. The oil lamp emitted a fiery yellow light, trying to illuminate the entire room. But because the light was too weak, it could only illuminate the nearby area, which made other places even darker. On both sides of the table, there were two young men sitting. The young man with white hair made a request to the white young man in black clothes opposite. Faced with the request of his best friend, the young man hesitated for a moment before slowly saying, "Okay, Gellert." The young Gellert Grindelwald looked happy and grabbed the hands of the young Albus Dumbledore and said excitedly, "I knew you would agree. Let's do it for the greater good." Soon, the scene changed. The much more mature Grindelwald and Dumbledore stood on a dual stage. "Gellert, let go. So many people have died." Dumbledore held a magic wand. A look of sadness appeared on his face and said to Grindelwald, "Hesitation, cowardice, and short-sightedness. Dumbledore, you disappoint me so much. All my actions are for the wizarding world. What is the greater good? The interests of wizards as a whole are the greatest interests. You only see how many people are dying now. Haven't you thought about how many wizards will die in the future if no one dies today?" At the end, Grindelwald's tone became more and more excited, and he questioned with anger. Dumbledore heard his best friend's angry tone mixed with a tone of regret, and he was silent, with a trace of regret in his eyes. The scene changed many times, all of which were conversations between Dumbledore and Grindelwald at different ages. Suddenly, a pair of light blue eyes opened. Lying on the bed, Dumbledore's face showed a very complicated expression, after waking up from a dream. There was hesitation, regret, sorrow, and nostalgia. A lot of emotions were complicated together, making it difficult to grasp. After a moment, Dumbledore stood up, took out a slightly dirty meditation basin, walked to the desk, and put it down. He took out his wand, touched his temple lightly, and slowly pulled out a memory line with white light, like a white ribbon, and put it into the meditation basin. Then he suddenly entered. The scene in the meditation basin was exactly what he experienced yesterday on the Quidditch field. He watched again, carefully observing Lockhart's words and every move, until Lockhart waved his wand excitedly and said passionately, "Make wizards great again." The picture stopped abruptly, and stopped quietly at this moment. Dumbledore looked at Lockhart at this time. His eyes began to become a little distracted, and a white-haired figure quietly emerged from his eyes, overlapped with Lockhart, and muttered to himself, "Everything. For the greater good. Make wizards great again." Hogwarts, a classroom. Squibbian sat on a bench, looking uneasy, looking at the squibs around him who were sitting everywhere like him, with nervous or expectant expressions on their faces, and the psychological pressure was even greater. Yesterday, he watched the squib Filch perform magic and Professor Lockhart carefully answer questions. When he saw Filch perform magic, he was so excited that his heart was pounding. He saw that a female squib of about his age had already shed tears. And he, unconsciously, had tears in his eyes. Squibs, a word full of contempt, symbolize the bottom of the wizarding world. Squibs like him who can get a stable job are still considered good. More squibs are penniless and wandering around. As for returning to the Muggle world, for most squibs, the Muggle world is unfamiliar, full of unknowns and risks. They have been in the wizarding world for many years, and cannot understand everything in the Muggle world. And the Muggle world, for the lower class, is a crueler place than the wizarding world. Squibs can still survive in the wizarding world, but in the lower Muggle world, gangs, drugs, and guns are mixed together, full of darkness, sin and blood. For a Muggle without an identity, it is equivalent to a stowaway coming to London. The situation is not much better than entering hell. Ian is better. He was born in a wizard family. His parents are relatively open-minded and often take him to play in the Muggle world. He has a general understanding of the Muggle world since he was a child. After growing up, due to his interest in Muggles, he has a certain understanding of the Muggle world through some books. Although not much, the knowledge he has learned is enough to lay the foundation for his revenge plan. When he thought of revenge, Ian's eyes were on the corridor outside. He felt that, even if he was holding a muggle weapon, the probability of a squib killing a wizard was too low. As long as the other party paid a little attention, a random transformation spell could turn his weapon into nothing. And if he became a wizard, the probability of revenge would increase significantly. Now, the only thing he had to do was to wait patiently for a wizard to call his name and enter the corridor outside. Prepare for Professor Lockhart's interview. As long as the interview passed, he would have the hope of becoming a wizard, and the probability of revenge would be greatly increased. If he fails, he can only buy some journals and study the meditation method mentioned by Lockhart to see if he can become a wizard. Ian knew very well that being Lockhart's research assistant or student would be the best opportunity for him to become a powerful wizard or to avenge his parents. If he missed this opportunity, then Ian shook his head and expelled the negative emotions in his heart. He was ready to meet the upcoming interview in his best condition. Time passed by. Ian watched the squibs walk out one after another. Thanks to his good psychological quality, his anxious and nervous mood began to slowly stabilize. Suddenly, Ian, Amiko, really you 36 people come out. A 6th-year Gryffindor girl shouted loudly. When Ian heard his name, his heart jumped. He quickly stood up and walked to the front of the Gryffindor girl Marian. The rest of the people also lined up behind Ian one after another. Marian looked at the handsome young man Ian standing in the front, and a hint of surprise flashed across her face, but she nodded to follow. Soon, Ian and others followed Marian to the corridor outside. Standing at the door of the next classroom, they lined up and waited quietly for the people inside to come out. After a while, a large number of duds poured out of the classroom, looking nervous, anxious, worried, and confused. This made Ian's originally stable mood begin to become slightly nervous, and the people in the queue behind him were even more uneasy. Ian took a deep breath, opened the door, entered, and prepared for his interview. Thanks to the Wind of Disillusionment for the 500-point reward, and thanks to the Fireside Cooking Wine for the 107-point reward, thanks to the Fantasy Time Travel Master, Zio Heoa 111, Book Friend. 160,821,154,752,911, HC 960,310, I'm already autistic, Guo Cheng, Siglesi, Book Friend. 20180723001313293, Book Friend 160,720,075,057,087, GG Fuji GA. Yifei Ren, Yugu Kunzaiang, Fat Big Star Fried Circle, Yushang Jiang, Book Friend 20210523083205415, I'm sad, Rush to Heaven to Run Naked, 9,832,128. Zhang Teo Teo, Test Account 007, Book Friend 20210301101946330, Book Friend. 20220122083202200, Guang Fei Zhilan, Ivwiji, Kus, Yinze, Shandu and Chen's monthly ticket. Chapter 166 Godly Opponent and Idiot Teammate. As soon as Ian entered the classroom, he saw Professor Lockhart sitting on the podium, and his eyes flashed with excitement. Then he looked at the whole classroom. There were 36 tables in the classroom. They were arranged in 6 rows and 6 columns throughout the classroom. Ian saw Professor Lockhart sitting on the podium, and his eyes flashed with excitement. Then, he saw the table opposite Professor Lockhart's podium. This made Ian's heart move, and he hurriedly walked forward and sat in front of the table opposite Lockhart. The people behind him saw Ian's actions and were immediately a little annoyed, feeling that they had missed an opportunity to leave a good impression on Professor Lockhart. Ian walked in front of the table, looked at Professor Lockhart opposite, bowed very politely, and said hello. After seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly and motioned to sit down. The people behind him chose their favorite seats according to their preferences. After seeing everyone sit down, Lockhart waved his wand lightly, and a slightly thick stack of test papers, plus a large number of feather pens, floated in the air, and flew towards all the squibs present. Soon, a test paper and a quill appeared on the table in front of everyone. Then, all the squibs heard Lockhart say calmly, "One test paper, 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and prepare for the next 25 minutes of question and answer session." One thing to emphasize is that the test paper has no score. It is just to obtain some of your information and ideas, so that I can understand you and choose the right research assistant. So, just write down your true thoughts. If you don't want to write anything, you can leave it blank, but you must not write anything false. Note that the quill is enchanted. If it is false information, it will turn into other colors, and I hate cheating. Hearing what Lockhart said, all the squibs looked stern and nodded. Okay, let's get started. With Lockhart's order, the squibs, who had been impatient for a long time, picked up their quills, opened the test paper, and filled in the information. Ian did the same. After opening the test paper, Ian took a general look at all the questions, and found that the number of questions was okay, and 20 minutes was just right. The first part asked about his personal and family information. Then, it was about his attitude towards wizards and magic. Suddenly, Ian's eyes condensed, and he looked at this question with some confusion, not knowing what it meant. What do you think of muggles? How much do you know about the muggle world? This is not a screening of research assistants. What does it have to do with muggles? Moving his eyes down again, he found that there were some similar questions that seemed unrelated. How much do you know about non-wizard races? What is your attitude towards them? As a future wizard, what problems do you think exist in the wizarding world? The thought flashed through Ian's mind, but he didn't think deeply about it, because time was limited, and he had to write it quickly. Facing the information about his family, Ian was very calm, and wrote down the situation of both his parents' death. As for the attitude towards magic, there is no doubt that he is very eager to learn magic with Professor Lockhart. Then about the attitude towards wizards, Ian hesitated slightly, thought about it, and wrote it solemnly. The wizarding community is very complex and cannot be generalized. I once knew my boss, and he treated me very well, so I'm full of gratitude. But at the same time, the attitude towards some cruel dark wizards is naturally completely opposite. But overall, most wizards are okay, only some dark wizards are like the cancer of the wizarding world. He simply wrote down his general attitude, and did not go into depth. He remembered what Professor Lockhart said. Even if he didn't want to write it, he could not write false information. Then, Ian continued to write. When he saw the topic of muggles, Ian wrote frankly, because of my parents, when I was a child, I have a certain understanding of the muggle world. After growing up, I have a more comprehensive and in-depth understanding of the muggle world through some muggle books. For muggles, I personally think that we should treat muggles more rationally, instead of using a contemptuous attitude and full of disdain for muggles, because of the words of some people. Similarly, Ian did not talk in depth. He was worried that some of his ideas were too different from those of wizards, and thus abandoned, which would really be asking for trouble. As a squib, it was difficult for him to have the same view as wizards towards muggles. Because, through some books in the muggle world, he found that, even if a muggle wanted to kill a squib like him, it would be very easy. It is even possible to kill wizards. Naturally, in his heart, he did not dare to look down on muggles. He looked up at the time, and found that nearly half of the time had passed. Hurry up and write down what you think. If you can write, then write it down. If you are worried about problems, then write less, and try not to leave it blank. For example, the understanding and attitude towards non-wizard races. Ian didn't know much about this aspect, so he simply wrote down a few names he knew, such as goblins, centaurs, etc. Regarding attitude, he also thought seriously. After listening to Professor Lockhart's last speech yesterday, he felt very shocked, and left a deep impression on him. After thinking about it, he wrote that everything is based on wizards, and wizards will be great again. Let wizards be great again. When I thought of this sentence, Ian felt a little excited for some reason, and there was a surge of blood in his heart. At this moment, accompanied by the rustling sound of writing in the classroom, Lockhart closed his eyes and cast a spell to explore the spiritual talents of this batch of squibs. He wanted to choose a research assistant, or more accurately, to cultivate his own strength. An important criterion is spiritual talent. The new magic system does not require high bloodline, but pays more attention to spiritual talent. Squibs with good spiritual talent can quickly realize the resources he invested. You know, Filch's spiritual talent can only be said to be average. But the reason why he performed well yesterday, the most important thing is that when Filch found him and said he wanted to testify for him, he consumed a lot of resources to cultivate him. For example, he provided some potions that he used when meditating in Kamar-Taj, or provided some various magic items that could increase the speed of cultivation and concentration. These, and then let him cast magic smoothly in just 1 week. The resources consumed, although not much for Lockhart. But if the number is enlarged to 100 squibs, 1000 squibs, it will become a huge amount. Therefore, Lockhart tends to find squibs with good spiritual talents as his helpers. Of course, spiritual talent is only one of the important criteria. The most core criterion is their character. The test papers written by Ian and other squibs are actually questionnaires issued by Lockhart. The main purpose is to understand the personality traits of these squibs. He certainly notes that it is impossible for squibs to fully reveal their thoughts to him. Everyone has their own scruples and worries. But despite this, he can judge a wizard's personality traits more or less through the content of these questionnaires. At least, is he a mature young man, or a childish kid, or a sympathetic saint, a rational calm adult? These can be seen more or less. As the saying goes, I'm not afraid of godlike opponents, but I'm afraid of teammates like pigs. Although he will not have too high requirements for his future teammates, teammates like pigs like the saint are absolutely excluded. Chapter 167, Reforming the Basics of the Wizarding World. Okay, time is up. Everyone stop writing. Take a 5-minute break now. After 5 minutes, I will ask some simple questions, based on the information you have filled in. After Lockhart finished speaking, he saw all the squibs put down their quills, waved his wand, and took back all the test papers and quills. He lowered his head, and began to look at the answers written by everyone. After all, it was a questionnaire, and there were not too many questions. Lockhart simply glanced at it, and made a rough judgment. The squibs below looked a little nervous as they watched Professor Lockhart in front of them check their test papers. They were all unwilling to lose these opportunities. They even had the idea of writing some false information, to improve their own value, so that Professor Lockhart would look at them differently. As a result, the black handwriting suddenly turned red, scaring them to stop writing immediately. They quickly wrote down their true thoughts. Strangely enough, after they were asked to write down their true thoughts, they found that their handwriting had turned back to black. They couldn't help but secretly marvel. In fact, with so many quills, Lockhart couldn't refine all of them into magic items. Not only was it a waste of time, but also a waste of his energy. He just cast some spells on it. The spell is not aimed at the brush, but at the user. As long as they try to lie, they will feel that the words they write have turned red. It has an effect similar to psychological suggestion. Naturally, the basic authenticity of the questionnaire can be guaranteed. As time passed, all the little wizards were more or less nervous. Their fists clenched subconsciously, and they stared at Professor Lockhart, who was sitting in the front. Soon, Lockhart read all the test papers, and had a rough judgment of this batch of squibs. Later, it was time to ask some questions on the spot. Okay, the 5-minute break is over. In the next 25 minutes, I will ask some questions. If you are willing to answer, you can raise your hand to apply. Similarly, I want to hear your true thoughts. You can say less or even nothing, but you must not lie. As soon as Lockhart's voice fell, all the squibs nodded to show that they understood. The first question is, what do you think is the most fundamental difference between wizards and squibs? What changes will you experience when you become wizards? As soon as Lockhart asked the question, Ian, who was facing him, immediately raised his hand. Looking at Ian, he recalled the questionnaire he had just filled out and nodded slightly. Ian, you tell me. Okay, Professor. Ian stood up, pondered for a moment, as if he was organizing his words, and said, Professor, I think the most fundamental difference between wizards and squibs is the mastery of magic, or force. For an ordinary wizard, it is easy to kill a muggle or a squib. A random flame curse can cause the unarmed squib to lose his life. At this point, Ian's tone was mixed with a hint of emotion. When we become wizards, the biggest change will be that the previous contempt for squibs will be far away. We will enjoy all the rights that a normal wizard should have, such as being able to enter some places that squibs were not allowed to enter. We can choose to practice spells, use magic items, make potions, etc. At this point, Ian's face was full of longing. Hearing what Ian said, the squibs around him nodded in agreement. As the lowest level of the wizarding world, most of them have been discriminated against by wizards. Lockhart nodded in agreement, motioned Ian to sit down, and continued to ask, "Any other ideas?" Soon, a well-dressed female squib raised her hand. Lockhart simply searched and recalled her name, and gently tapped her wand and said, "Rika, you speak." "Professor Lockhart, I think the most essential difference between wizards and squibs lies in the purity of wizard blood." Rika replied seriously, "My father is a potion master. He has studied my problem and mentioned it to me. The reason why I don't have a magic right is that my wizard blood is not pure enough, so I can't become a wizard. When we become a wizard, we will be able to develop our own blood. We can purify our own blood and improve our strength. At that time, whether we want to learn spells, alchemy, potions, etc." After hearing this, Lockhart nodded gently, and also did not praise or comment, and continued to ask the squibs, "Any other ideas?" Soon, some squibs raised their hands one after another. Lockhart carefully remembered their ideas in his heart. He asked questions to everyone. On the one hand, he wanted to see what the squibs thought about becoming a wizard. After all, he had no experience with squibs before, so he couldn't say that he had a complete grasp of their ideas. Knowing some of them would also facilitate the adjustment of the plan later. Squibs are his base in the future, and he must have a deep understanding of them before he can mobilize them. On the other hand, he also asked questions to reserve a list for his talent pool. Although he mentioned before that he would only select 100 squibs as research assistants. But these 100 squibs will be completely exposed and will be paid attention to by all forces in the wizarding world, such as the Pureblood family and Dumbledore. At the same time, his every move of the research assistants will also be fully analyzed. This will undoubtedly restrict some of his hands and feet. Moreover, if he wants to stabilize his base, he can't rely on only 100 squibs, and he needs more people. In other words, he wants to increase the number of wizards who are born from squibs, and the best way is naturally for him to train some squibs as his students in private, and help them grow. Then let them continue to secretly train new squibs to become wizards, and so on, and so forth to stabilize the base. This kind of students will be the core pillar of the new magic system. He can safely and boldly allocate resources to cultivate their growth, and pass on some of his own ideas and new magic to them. This will lay the foundation for reforming the wizarding world. Malfoy family, hall. At this moment, Lucius Malfoy was sitting on the sofa, pouring half a glass of red wine, raising it up, and signaling to the pure-blooded wizard of the Parkinson family opposite. Kane Parkinson was wearing a dark green wizard robe, with the Parkinson family's emblem emblazoned on his chest with light gold and silk thread, which, combined with his handsome and mature face, revealed a hint of nobility. Kane Parkinson also raised the red wine in his hand, shook it slightly, and took a sip. Then he asked with some expectation, "Lucius, can we talk about your plan now? I have also seen the effect of meditation. If we can master it, the benefits will be immeasurable." Lucius Malfoy smiled and said, "Kane, don't worry, we still have to wait for a lady to come. Our plan requires her cooperation." Hearing this, Kane's eyes lit up, and he didn't say much, slowly tasting the red wine in the glass. After a while, bang, the magic fireplace not far away flashed green light, accompanied by the slight explosion of green flames, and a figure quietly emerged. At the same time, Lucius stood up and said to Kane, "Let's welcome Ms. Rita Skeeter. We are about to return to the Marvel world. What do you want to see about the Marvel world? Welcome to chat." Chapter 168 Moonlight Meditation. "Miss Skeeter, welcome to the Malfoy family." Lucius Malfoy looked at Rita across from him and extended his hand to greet her. He never expected that a reporter who only distorted reports could have such a skill. Thinking of what Rita Skeeter had said before, Lucius's mouth curled up. "You are too polite, Mr. Malfoy." Rita extended her hand very politely and shook it. Looking at the wizard behind Lucius, she asked in confusion, "Who is this?" Kane Parkinson looked at the witch in front of him, who was wearing an emerald green wizard robe and a pair of jeweled glasses. His brows were slightly wrinkled, and his face was puzzled. "Rita Skeeter, why did Lucius ask him to come? Didn't her mission fail last time?" The thought flashed through his mind, but Kane also smiled on his face, extended his hand and greeted politely, "Hello, I'm Kane Parkinson." Then, Lucius introduced the two to each other and took them back to the sofa in the living room. Dobby. With Lucius's shout, a house elf wrapped in rags appeared in front of him. "Dobby, prepare dinner. I will have dinner with Miss Skeeter and Mr. Parkinson later." "Yes, master." The house elf nodded vigorously and replied loudly. Then, he disappeared. Lucius said to Rita Skeeter, "Miss Skeeter, did you bring the things we talked about before?" "I did bring the things." Rita nodded affirmatively, but looked at the wizard Kane next to her and hesitated. "But, are you sure you should take it out now?" "Of course." Lucius nodded affirmatively and said, "Kane is not an outsider. The future plan still needs the help of the Parkinson family." Hearing this, Rita hesitated, but still reached out from the space extension bag and took out a dark green notebook. This made Kane next to him curious about what could make Lucius change his attitude towards half-bloods. As if seeing the curious expression on Kane's face, Lucius smiled and introduced Kane. "Miss Skeeter was also persecuted because of Lockhart. So, she wants to join us." Hearing this, Kane nodded slightly, as if he understood what Lucius meant. And Rita Skeeter next to him hurriedly said, "Yes, these days, Lockhart has mobilized his fans to send owls to curse me, and there are many howlers, and someone even threw dirty water at my door. This Lockhart is too arrogant. He thinks he has achieved something and forgets himself. I'm afraid he won't even take the pureblood family seriously in the future." Hearing Rita Skeeter's words of discord, Kane smiled and didn't say much. Turning his head to look at Lucius, he wanted to see what he would say. Sure enough, Lucius said directly, "Kane, don't worry, our future plans cannot be separated from Miss Skeeter. And this time, I brought a precious gift. A book on the meditation method studied by Gilderoy Lockhart." Hearing what Lucius said, Kane's breathing was a little rapid, and he asked quickly, "Are you sure, Lucius?" Lucius nodded gently, and gestured to Rita Skeeter. Rita picked up the dark green notebook in her hand, and turned a page. There was indeed some information about the meditation method written on it. Kane saw the handwriting on it, and found that it was a typical feather pen copying. He asked thoughtfully, "Lucius, can you confirm the authenticity? Also, I'm very curious, how did Miss Skeeter get it? Don't forget, Lockhart is in Hogwarts." Hearing this, Lucius looked up, and gave Rita Skeeter a look. After seeing this, Rita understood, and smiled at Kane, saying, "Mr. Kane, don't worry, the meditation method is guaranteed to be true. Because, I personally sneaked into Lockhart's office and copied it. On the day when Lockhart proved his research results on the Quidditch field." Hearing this, Kane asked with some doubts, "Miss Skeeter, it's not that I doubt your ability. The problem is that, even if everyone focused on the Quidditch field that day, the defense that Hogwarts should have is still not weak. How did you avoid these defenses and sneak into the office of the Hogwarts professor and successfully copied his research results?" At this point, Kane frowned. As a member of the school board, he clearly felt that there was a problem. If Rita Skeeter was a powerful wizard, it would be another matter. But as far as he knew, Rita Skeeter was just an ordinary wizard with average strength. She was famous for her ability to distort the facts. Seeing Kane's expression, Lucius beside him said with a smile, "Kane, let me introduce you to another identity of Ms. Rita Skeeter. She is an animagus." As if cooperating with Lucius, Rita Skeeter turned around. Instantly, she disappeared in front of Kane. Seeing this scene, Kane's face changed, and then he suddenly realized. It turned out to be an illegal animagus. No wonder she had reported many scandals of members of the Ministry of Magic before. Animagus, Kane is relatively familiar with it. Once it changes, it seems to really become an animal. If you don't pay attention, it is difficult to find it. Then, Kane closed his eyes slightly and carefully felt the changes in the surrounding environment. Animagus is strong, but the weakness is that, as long as someone knows that the other party changes into the form of an animal, then as long as you prepare in advance, it will not be a problem. Then Kane was stunned. He found that there was only a small beetle that was different from the surrounding environment. Suddenly he was a little envious. Such a small creature, who would be vigilant of ordinary wizards? It is simply the best choice for exploring intelligence. Thinking of this, Kane understood why Lucius asked him to meet Rita Skeeter. Indeed, Rita Skeeter would definitely be very useful in the future. While Kane was thinking, Rita Skeeter changed into a human form and said to Kane, "Mr. Kane, I can sneak into Lockhart's office. It's because my animagus is a beetle, which is very small. I can hide from the sight of all wizards and sneak into Lockhart's office." After entering the office, I found the meditation research records that Lockhart placed on the desk. Because I was worried about triggering other magic traps, I just copied down the meditation research records he placed on the desk. That's the one you saw. Although it doesn't completely record all the results of the meditation method, through this research record, we can get a lot of information about the meditation method. Moreover, there is already an almost perfect meditation method in it. The name is Moonlight Meditation Method. Chapter 169. Are you willing to be my student? At night, in the Hogshead pub, in a small house near the edge, Ian lay on the bed, tossing and turning. Finding that he couldn't sleep, he held his head with both hands and looked up at the ceiling quietly from the bed, as if he could see the stars in the night sky through the ceiling. Recalling the scene of taking the exam today, Ian's eyes were full of expectation and nervousness. Can I get this opportunity? If I can get it, can I become a wizard quickly? At that time, I can not only cast magic freely, but also seek revenge on my enemies in an upright manner. If I can't get it, should I give up revenge temporarily? Idea. Wait for Professor Lockhart's journal article to be published, study meditation, and become a wizard, then talk about other things. Various ideas and distractions kept emerging in Ian's brain. It made him more and more energetic and more unable to sleep. Suddenly buzz. Ian suddenly found that the ceiling was glowing with a faint fiery red light. He quickly turned his head and looked to the side. In his eyes, a circular portal with sparks quietly emerged. At the same time, a wizard wearing a black wizard robe and carrying a small suitcase in his hand came out. With the light brought by the sparks, Ian saw a familiar face appearing in front of him and exclaimed, "Professor Lockhart." He immediately got up and walked out of bed. He touched his face carefully and pinched his arm hard, wondering if he was dreaming. The piercing pain in his arm made him sure that he was in reality, but he still felt like a dream. Lockhart, on the other hand, was quite interested in the strange movements of the young squib in front of him. Then he heard the other party stuttering, "Professor Lockhart, I'm not dreaming. You actually came to my room." As he spoke, Ian's tone became more and more fluent, as if he had thought of something, and he asked excitedly with excitement, "You coming here? Does that mean I can be your research assistant?" In response to Ian's question, Lockhart gently affirmed, "Ian, I saw the questionnaire you filled out, and your performance in class. I think they are both very good. Of course you can be my research assistant." At this point, Lockhart changed the subject. His tone became excited, with a hint of temptation. "However, I think you deserve a brighter future and a more glorious future. Ian Norton, are you willing to be my student?" Hearing what Lockhart said, Ian looked excited and replied quickly in an excited tone, "Of course I'm willing. Of course I'm willing. Professor Lockhart, I dream of it." Before Ian finished venting his excitement, Lockhart interrupted Ian directly and said seriously, "Ian, don't rush to make a decision. You may only see the superficial scenery of becoming my student, but in fact, the risks behind it may be beyond your imagination. Ian, I don't want your future self to regret your choice at this moment. I think you should calm down, listen to everything I say, and then make a careful choice." Hearing Lockhart's serious tone, Ian quickly calmed down and said calmly, "Professor Lockhart, becoming your student is my dream. And the risks involved, I'm willing to listen to you, but after you finish speaking, I believe I will still not change the decision I made." Seeing Ian's attitude, Lockhart showed an admiring look on his face. Especially after hearing what Ian said, Lockhart instantly gave him a very high evaluation. Both his parents died, and he lived alone, but he still had such a good psychological quality and emotional intelligence. The more Lockhart looked at him, the happier he became. Seeing Ian just getting up, his clothes were wrinkled, and some clothes were left on the cabinet next to him. With a wave of the wand, Ian's clothes were instantly flattened, as if they were ironed. The clothes on the cabinet floated out, and began to be put on Ian. The buttons on the clothes also began to tie together automatically. Soon, a neat and tidy Ian appeared in front of Lockhart. At this time, Ian's eyes were slightly moist, as if he was missing something. The last person who did this for him was his parents. After his parents died, as a squib, he could only clean up by himself. Lockhart saw Ian's expression, and was slightly puzzled, but he did not think too much. He opened his suitcase, gestured with his hand, and said to Ian in a deep voice, "Ian, come in. Maybe there are your future seniors or juniors in there." Hearing what Lockhart said, and seeing the magic suitcase in front of him, Ian was excited and stepped into it. After Ian went in, Lockhart closed the suitcase, and opened another portal. Tonight, he would gather all the qualified squibs to teach together. As soon as Ian entered the suitcase, he saw a staircase. At the same time, a house elf appeared in front of him. It was Goldcoin. Goldcoin looked at Ian in front of him and introduced himself. "I'm the Master's house elf Goldcoin. Next, I will take you into the Master's practice room. You can rest, or eat something in there. The Master has ordered that when everyone is gathered, he will tell you what you should know." After listening to what Goldcoin said, Ian nodded to show that he understood. Later, he followed Goldcoin down the stairs, and passed through a long corridor. Walking in the corridor, he turned his head to look at the window beside him, and was surprised to find that there was a flat lawn outside. However, it was already night, and the sky was dim, so he could not see the specific scene clearly. But he could still vaguely see some animals on the lawn. Without time to think deeply, Ian followed the Goldcoin forward, and entered a spacious space. Looking around, there were some alchemical puppets scattered on the edge of the middle aisle, as if they could be called up to fight at any time. And in the front, several figures could be seen. Ian followed the Goldcoin, and walked forward along the middle aisle, and the figures became clearer. He found two young men who were about the same age as him. I thought that they should be like him. Both of them were duds recognized by Professor Lockhart, and they might become his seniors or juniors in the future. The Goldcoin took Ian here and said directly, "I have done what the Master asked me to do. You just wait here quietly. If you are thirsty or hungry, there are some food and drinks over there. You can take them yourself." After saying that, without waiting for Ian to reply, the Goldcoin teleported away directly. For the Goldcoin, if it wasn't for the Master's order, he wouldn't pay attention to these squibs. And Ian didn't care about the Goldcoin's attitude. The guests he had received before had a really bad attitude. The Goldcoin's attitude can only be said to be very average. Immediately, Ian walked up to talk to the two young men who were also squibs. With his eloquence that he had been training over the years, he soon chatted with them enthusiastically, as if they were good friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. During this period, Ian saw that the Goldcoin brought a few more squibs, both men and women, and their ages were not much different from his. However, he found that everyone present had one thing in common. That is, they were dressed in ordinary clothes, and didn't wear particularly good clothes or gorgeous jewelry. This means that most people are in the same state as him, living a relatively ordinary life, or in poverty. This made him think. After a while, suddenly, a familiar figure emerged. It was Professor Lockhart. Thanks to the 100-point reward from Rising Sun 101. Thanks to Anshid Biris, Bangzhuang, Shuiao 202001201956088885, Zhang Richard, the particularly picky bookworm, Han Cheo Lungsi, and Yao Iao Shalixing for their monthly tickets. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170. Let the blood no longer be sacred. Let the blood return to ordinary. Inside the magic suitcase, the spell practice room. Since you have chosen to come here, that means that in the future I may become your mentor, and you will become my students. I have told all of you before, that the risks of becoming my students may exceed your imagination. I think this is something you should understand, before making a decision. Lockhart looked at the 9 squibs opposite him and spoke slowly. Hearing what Lockhart said, all the squibs listened attentively. Of course, they were very willing to become Professor Lockhart's students. But they were full of curiosity about the so-called risks. Seeing everyone's expressions, Lockhart raised his mouth, waved his wand, and outlined the word wizard in front of everyone. Then, Lockhart said, before telling, I think you should understand a concept, that is, what is a wizard? Tell me what you think. Hearing Lockhart's question, the squibs had different expressions. Ian frowned and fell into deep thought, as if he was hesitating about something. As for the other squibs, some were full of curiosity, as if they were expecting Lockhart to give them the answer. Some were eager to try, as if they wanted to tell everyone the answer in their mind. In less than 5 seconds, one person raised his hand, and Lockhart said, Remy, tell me what you think. The squib named Remy Yoda said, Professor Lockhart, I think that those who can cast magic are wizards. Those who can't cast magic are squibs or muggles. Hearing Remy's answer, Lockhart nodded slightly and said, that's right, but does anyone else have any ideas? Everyone looked at each other, and found that what Remy said seemed to be their idea. Aren't wizards just able to cast magic? Can wizards who can't cast magic still be called wizards? However, Ian slowly raised his hand. Looking at Ian, Lockhart said with a smile, Ian, tell me what you think. Ian looked at Professor Lockhart in front of him, paused, as if organizing his words, and said, Professor Lockhart, actually, I had the same idea as Remy before. Wizards can definitely cast magic. But, in today's interview, I heard a girl mentioned that her father was a potion master. In her story, her father, after professional research, said that wizards have awakened magical bloodlines, and squibs just have unawakened bloodlines. So, from this point of view, wizards refer to those who have awakened bloodlines. Hearing Ian's answer, Lockhart nodded in praise and said, Ian is right. Before the meditation method came out, the definition of wizards was those with awakened bloodlines, or those with magical riots. Those who have not awakened bloodlines are squibs, and those who do not have magical bloodlines are muggles. This is the common understanding of the entire wizarding world. At this point, Lockhart changed the subject and his tone became serious, and meditation changed everything. Why can meditation make a squib become a wizard? Because meditation allows wizards to no longer rely on blood, but rely on the power of runes. At this point, most of the squibs looked puzzled, as if they didn't know what Lockhart meant by this sentence, but Ian and a female squib looked confused. However, Lockhart did not answer directly, but continued to ask a question to guide their thinking. Speaking of blood, what do you think of pure blood family? Almost all the squibs gave a common answer. After hearing this, Lockhart nodded and praised. Wizards rely on magical blood, so the higher the purity of the blood, the more they are sought after by wizards. And pure blood families, because of their crazy pursuit of blood purity, almost every generation has more or less wizards. The glory, status, influence they enjoy, including the gold galleons they earn, and the magic items they see, are all closely related to pure blood families. Having said that, Lockhart continued to ask everyone, now ask another question. If someone wants to take your job, take your gold galleons, and want to take away everything from you, what would you do? Hearing this, most of the squibs looked very serious, even a little pale, as if they knew what the risk Lockhart was talking about. Seeing their expressions, Lockhart answered directly, we won't sit and wait for death. We will resist and fight with our lives. Don't you think so? Hearing Lockhart's question, everyone nodded subconsciously. Indeed, if someone wants to take away everything from them, they will definitely fight desperately. And in the future, the pure blood families will think so too. Because their power, glory, and status all come from their bloodline, they will never let ordinary wizards get these. They want to monopolize everything, and control all wizards in their hands. and the emergence of meditation will break their monopoly on the wizarding world, making blood no longer sacred, but returning to ordinary. When blood returns to ordinary, everything they have gained will gradually collapse. What do you think they will do? At this point, Lockhart's tone became more serious and cold, and he outlined a picture through his words. In the future, meditation will completely disappear under their full attack. In the future, squibs will still be squibs, and will never be able to cast magic. In the future, bloodline will still be sacred, pure blood families will still monopolize everything, and squibs will still be at the bottom of the wizarding world. It is very likely that future squibs will be like you. If you are lucky, you will find a job and live slowly in a corner. If you are unlucky, you will be on the streets and wait for death. Hearing the picture described by Lockhart and thinking of his own experience, anger and despair rose on his face. As squibs, at the bottom of the world, they fear the power of pure blood families more than ordinary wizards. After all, wizards at least have the ability to resist, but they are like weeds, and they can be easily swatted away without even the ability to beg for mercy. Lockhart saw all this, and knew that the situation was almost right. Then he said slowly, "Now, do you know the risks you may face in the future? Squibs who practice meditation will definitely be within the range of their full attack. Because your existence is like a constant reminder that blood is no longer sacred and has returned to ordinary. As long as you have a trace of magical blood, you can become a wizard and cast magic." Hearing what Lockhart said, Ian couldn't help but ask, "Professor, what should we do in the future?" Lockhart didn't answer directly when he heard this, but said, "I invented meditation, and I also know what it means. The birth of meditation is a turning point in the wizarding world. As I said before, meditation has broken the millennium dilemma of the wizarding world. It makes blood no longer sacred and makes blood return to ordinary. Therefore, a new definition of wizards has emerged. What is a wizard? A wizard is one who can practice meditation. Or, it is more appropriate to call them new wizards." Chapter 171. The right to cast a spell can only be obtained through war. Ian, you just asked what we should do. My answer is actually very simple. Lockhart looked at the 9 squibs in front of him with a serious expression and spoke word by word. Fight. Although the pure blood families cannot completely eradicate the meditation method, they will definitely monopolize it. The final result is that ordinary squibs will always be squibs, and the squibs of the pure blood families can become wizards. The right of squibs to cast spells can never be obtained through negotiation. Only through fighting and war can we defeat the pure blood families and make them face reality. The squibs can truly obtain the right to cast magic and become wizards. Hearing this, some squibs asked Lockhart with a somewhat panicked tone, "Professor, can we really defeat the pure blood families?" "Of course." Lockhart said firmly, "I believe that we will eventually win the final victory. Not only because of the meditation method, but also because I have created a new magic system." At this point, Lockhart said meaningfully, "I, Gilderoy Lockhart, never fight an unprepared battle. The pure blood families are very strong, but your mentor, I'm not weak either." However, most of the squibs' attention was not here, but they were very curious about the new magic system that Lockhart mentioned. Just now he mentioned the new wizards, and now he mentioned the new magic system. All this made them feel a little dizzy, as if the content of today's conversation was a bit too much information. Remy couldn't help asking, "Professor, what is the new magic system you just mentioned? Is this the confidence that we can defeat the pure blood family?" Hearing that Remy had taken the initiative to put the pure blood family in the enemy's position, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. Then, he explained, "The new wizards I mentioned are not just casually said. The reason why I mentioned new wizards is that the most important criterion is the new magic system. The new magic system is different from the magic system you have seen before. It has a lower learning threshold and is more effective when combined with meditation. As long as you work hard, your strength can be improved quickly. In the wizarding world, the right to speak is in the hands of the strong. As long as you are stronger, the pure blood family is not a problem." At the end, Lockhart spoke loudly. After hearing this, Ian and other squibs were excited, as if they saw the scene of the pure blood family kneeling at their feet to show their submission after they became stronger in the future. Seeing everyone's expressions, Lockhart knew that the time had come. So he asked, I have explained to you the possible risks in the future. Now, tell me, are you willing to be my students? As soon as Lockhart finished speaking, Ian immediately shouted, yes, master, I'm willing to be your student. Ian's voice seemed to press the button to open, and all the squibs shouted, master, I'm willing to be your student. Lockhart looked at everyone's expressions, and nodded with satisfaction. These people were carefully selected by him. Although I dare not say that all of them are like Ian, who has no father or mother, their family ties are very weak. Moreover, their spiritual talents are not weak. If they are well trained, their strength will definitely improve. Of course, the most important thing is that they are definitely not saints. Thinking of this, Lockhart's mouth curled up. Then, he said to everyone, I'm very happy that you are willing to be my students. Now, you line up in a row. In order to facilitate the later magic teaching, I will cast a spell on you. As he said, as if he thought of something, Lockhart added, Ian, you are in the front row. After hearing this, Ian stood opposite Lockhart very excitedly. The other squibs looked at Ian with envy in their eyes, but stood behind Ian in an orderly manner. Looking at the excited Ian, Lockhart took out a wand with a sense of ceremony, and handed it to him. Patting Ian's shoulder gently, he said gently, Ian Norton, I, Gilderoy Lockhart, will be your mentor in the future, help you become a wizard, and teach you magical knowledge. And you, for the rest of your life, will contribute every bit of your strength to the great cause of new wizards. Ian nodded. Are you willing? I'm willing. Ian shouted loudly without any hesitation. At this moment, he held the wand in his hand. His eyes were a little dazed, as if he saw a light golden light emanating from his mentor, which made him feel excited. And Lockhart picked up his wand and gently touched Ian's arm. In an instant, Ian felt his arm slightly hot. Looking down, he found that a light golden circular pattern appeared on his arm. At the edge of the circular pattern, a golden dragon slowly swam around the text in the middle. The words in the middle of the pattern read, Make wizards great again. Seeing this sentence again, Ian's blood boiled. Then, he heard his mentor Lockhart say, Ian, this magic brand, in the future, if you focus your attention or mental power on the pattern, you can get some information contained in it. At the same time, when you become a wizard, you can consume magic power to communicate with me and your junior students in a simple way. This magic brand will be a witness to our relationship and a symbol of a new wizard. If you are in danger, summon the magic brand and your companions around will come to rescue you. Hearing his mentor's introduction, Ian touched the golden dragon pattern on his arm very cherishingly, nodded and said, Okay, mentor, I understand. After hearing this, Lockhart had a faint smile on his face, touched his left shoulder lightly with his right hand, and said in a deep voice, Let wizards be great again. After seeing this, he immediately understood, and also stretched out his right hand to touch his left shoulder lightly, bowed slightly to Lockhart, and shouted loudly, Let wizards be great again. This made the squibs behind him see this scene, and their expressions became more and more excited, and they all looked forward to their mentors branding their arms with magic brands. Then, Ian walked to the side, and the next squib stood in front of Lockhart. It was the same process, handing the wand, tapping the shoulder, branding the golden dragon pattern, careful introduction, and finally, make wizards great again. Every time the right hand touched the right shoulder, every time the head was slightly lowered, every time the slogan was shouted. This ritualistic process made Ian and other squibs on the side more and more impressed by this slogan. Soon, Lockhart left a golden dragon pattern on all the squibs. In fact, this magic mark shaped like a golden dragon pattern was the black magic that Lockhart exchanged with Slytherin, the top black wizard. It was also Lockhart who got inspiration from Voldemort's black magic mark. After a simple chat with Slytherin, he exchanged similar magic with some rune knowledge. He optimized it according to the knowledge he had mastered, and it became the current golden dragon magic mark. Then, Lockhart looked at the people standing by and said gently, Okay, now everyone follow my previous instructions. Focus on the brand, and get the gift I prepared for everyone. Hearing what Master Lockhart said, they all nodded, concentrating and staring at the golden dragon pattern on their arms and the text in the middle. Soon, Ian and others felt dizzy, and then a lot of text appeared in their minds. A quick look showed that their breathing was a little rapid. It was the star meditation method. Chapter 172 Lockhart's Talent Pool. The next morning, at the Hogshead Inn. Ian, are you really leaving? Aberforth Dumbledore, the owner of the Hogshead Inn, asked with some regret. Yes, boss. Ian replied firmly. Thank you for taking care of me during this period of time. Next time I return to the Hogshead Inn, I will definitely drink a glass of fire whiskey that you made. Hearing Ian's firm tone, Aberforth sighed softly. In fact, he had felt Ian's inner hesitation in recent times, and he also knew what Ian had experienced. However, he did not know much, but Ian's story reminded him of the experience of his son Credence. So he has been taking good care of him. Now it seems that the child has grown up and has his own ideas. After thinking for a while, Aberforth took out 10 gold galleons and placed them in front of Ian, saying gently, in that case, Ian, I look forward to meeting you next time. I will buy you a glass of fire whiskey for free. Keep these 10 gold galleons, don't refuse. If you need them later, it can be regarded as a reward for your dedicated service over the years. Hearing this, Ian's eyes were slightly moist, and he nodded heavily. Knowing that this was the boss's kindness, he kept the gold galleons and said gratefully, thank you, boss, thank you. After that, he picked up his suitcase and walked out. Aberforth looked at Ian's leaving figure, shook his head slightly, poured himself a glass of wine, and tasted it slowly. He missed his children a little. After Ian walked out of the Pig's Head Inn, he looked at the busy streets, and walked forward slowly. Last night, after he became a student of Lockhart's mentor, he began to practice meditation under Lockhart's guidance. At the same time, they were also told that they would be hidden in the dark in the future, and would not be exposed to the eyes of many pure-blood families like research assistants. And they would become the pillars and leaders of the new wizard system, which made them feel very proud. So when Lockhart suggested that they could live with him temporarily in order to better train them, they certainly did not refuse. After all, they were the students of the mentor, and being close to the mentor would also be convenient for practicing magic. Soon, Ian walked into an empty alley. He stretched out his arms and focused all his attention on the golden dragon pattern on his arm. A golden light flashed, as if calling for something. Bang! Soon, but with a slight sound, the figure of the house elf Gold Coin appeared in front of him. Gold Coin looked at Ian, the squib, with a complicated look in his eyes, and felt a little awkward. Without saying much, he stretched out his hand and pulled Ian's arm, saying, hold it tight, you may feel uncomfortable when you teleport later. Just bear with it. After hearing this, Ian immediately grabbed Gold Coin's slender arm. Then, whoosh, the space changed, and Ian instantly felt his stomach churning and wanted to vomit. He quickly covered his stomach and held it in. He had to meet his mentor later, and it would be very embarrassing if he really vomited. Then vomit. You will feel better after vomiting. The house elf Gold Coin held a trash can in front of Ian. Ugh, at this time, Ian couldn't hold it in anymore, and he started vomiting directly while holding the trash can. After a while, Ian felt much better in his stomach. He took the tissue handed over by Gold Coin, wiped his mouth, and slowly raised his head. Observe the surrounding rooms. This is a study room. There are brown-red bookshelves against the wall, with a large number of books on them, and some magical animal specimens around. However, what attracted his attention most was an open magic suitcase on the floor not far away. In an instant, he knew where he should go. Sure enough, he heard the house elf Gold Coin next to him say, Ian, the master has ordered you to go into the space inside the suitcase first, and practice on your own. If you have any questions, write them down. When he comes back in the evening, he will answer your questions during the practice. Ian nodded to show that he understood, and then followed Gold Coin into the suitcase space. Prepare to start your own magic practice. Hogwarts, classroom corridor. Harry, are they going to become Professor Lockhart's research assistants? Hermione looked at the squibs queuing in the corridor for the interview from the entrance of the corridor, and asked Harry next to her curiously. It should be like this, Hermione. Harry nodded, hesitated for a moment and said, now Professor Lockhart has a great reputation in the wizarding world. In the newspapers these 2 days, Professor Lockhart is praised as the father of meditation. Or he has broken the century-old dilemma of the wizarding world, so there is still hope for squibs. In short, many squibs come here because of his reputation. Well, in fact, the reason why Lockhart let Ritter Skeeter continue to write reports that slander him. On the one hand, it was to give Ritter a chance to be recognized by the Pureblood family and join the Pureblood family camp. On the other hand, it was actually to expand his own influence. In his previous life, Lockhart had seen many celebrities in the entertainment industry playing hype. First, they would throw out a shocking news, and then wait for it to ferment enough before reversing it, harvesting a large amount of traffic at once. Lockhart was actually just imitating a similar operation, and the effects seemed quite good. The part of wizards who had scolded him the most, after a reversal, suddenly felt guilty, and quickly turned from haters to fans. And they were quite firm in their hearts. Well, especially some witches, they were quite firm in their hearts. Hearing what Harry said, Hermione nodded in agreement. Indeed, Professor Lockhart is becoming more and more famous now, and too many people are looking for him. At this point, Hermione seemed to have thought of something and said sarcastically, I heard that Ritter Skeeter, who scolded the professor before, is now scolded by the professor's fans and dares not even go out of the house. After hearing this, Ron also showed a look of watching a show on his face and said, serves her right. Then, Ron asked curiously, Harry, Hermione, do you think Professor Lockhart will finish the interviews in a few days? Yesterday I saw at least hundreds of squibs coming. There are so many people. Harry shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Hermione thought about it and said hesitantly, maybe it will be soon. Professor Lockhart mentioned in the newspaper before that he would stop interviewing after recruiting 100 squibs. Maybe Professor Lockhart is almost done recruiting now. After hearing what Hermione said, the two nodded in agreement. Then, they looked at the long line of squibs curiously and left at this moment. At this moment, Lockhart looked at the new batch of squibs who were writing the survey papers below, and a sense of joy rose on his face. So far, through this interview activity, he has collected a lot of information about squibs. The suitable ones are all included in his inner talent pool. In his talent pool, there are 3 categories. The first category is similar to Ian, who has good spiritual talents, and for various reasons, has weak ties with his family, and has been living alone. In his mind, they are on the top priority list for training. In other words, he will invite them to join his first batch of students that night, and will do his best to train them to become talents. They have time and conditions to accept his teachings for a long time. And the squibs with good spiritual talents who have been living with their families, because they are not suitable for long-term teaching by Lockhart, he can only wait until his first batch of students are roughly talented. Let them help these squibs become wizards, count as the second batch of students, or disciples. There is another category, that is, although they are squibs, their relatives enjoy a certain status in the wizarding world. For example, some squibs from pureblood families, or relatives of alchemists and potion masters. Lockhart will give priority to including them in the list of research assistants. That is, out of the 100 places. These people will be placed in the eyes of the pureblood families, and their own relationships will be the best umbrella of protection. Most of the malice of the pureblood families will dissipate because of these umbrellas. At the same time, it also attracts attention and conceals risks for the squibs wizards trained privately by Lockhart. This series of actions will buy Lockhart a lot of development time. Next, prepare to return to the Marvel world. Use this period of time to train your students well. Chapter 173 Kamar-Taj and the relationship with other dimensions. On the eve of the arrival in the Marvel world, the interior space of the magic suitcase, the study, Lockhart sat at the desk, his eyes revealing his thoughts, and there was a half-opened magic book on the desk. But his attention was obviously not on the book. What Lockhart was thinking about now was his plan to improve his strength after arriving in the Marvel world. The new magic system in the Harry Potter world has begun, and it will only become more intense in the future. There will even be a life and death battle between new wizards and old wizards in the future. This is a battle of ideas and a battle for discourse power. The winner can interpret everything, and the loser. When Lockhart thought of this, he inexplicably thought of his house elf gold coins. He felt a chill immediately. He shook his head, put the negative emotions behind him, and continued to think about how to improve his strength. Only when the strength is improved can we be sure to deal with various dangers in the future. And the so-called strength is not only for oneself, but also for the students under his command, and the wizards under the new magic system. Only when the whole is strong can we truly obtain the complete fruits of victory. When Lockhart was thinking, suddenly, bang, knock, knock, teacher, we are here. A familiar voice came after a series of regular knocks. Ian, come in. As Lockhart finished speaking, 2 men and 1 woman opened the door and walked towards Lockhart. They were Ian, Remy and Vera. Teacher, what do you want to talk to us about? Ian and the other 2 looked at Teacher Lockhart in front of them, puzzled, and asked. Lockhart looked at the 3 outstanding students, thought for a while, and asked, how is your recent magic practice? Ian thought for a while and said, Teacher, thanks to the potion you provided us, I have successfully meditated 36 runes, and my mental strength has improved significantly. I can cast 5 to 8 spells. Lockhart nodded gently to show that he understood. Then, Remy Yoda and Vera Fatir also briefly introduced their own practice progress. The 3 of them have similar talents. They are the most hard-working among this group of students, and their progress is almost the same. After the 3 of them finished introducing themselves, Lockhart pondered for a moment, and said to them, Ian, Remy, Vera, do you want to further improve your strength in a short period of time? Of course. The 3 nodded in unison, showing curiosity and expectation. They knew that their mentor had a lot of good things. Basically, everyone in their batch of 23 people enjoyed a lot of resources. There were potions and magic items. Their hard work was one aspect, and sufficient resources were another. Otherwise, their practice progress would not be so fast. You 3 are the 3 best students in this batch, Lockhart said with a serious face. I think, given the current situation, you are qualified to know the biggest secret of our new wizard lineage. That is the new world. The countdown to the arrival of the Marvel world is 3 minutes. At night, Hogwarts, Lockhart's office. Lockhart waved his wand and cast a spell to shrink the magic suitcase at his feet and put it in his pocket. At the same time, the books in the Kamar-Taj world in the Marvel world floated in front of him. Lockhart held the book in both hands, recalling his posture before the crossing, and slightly adjusted his movements to ensure that it was exactly the same as in his memory. After feeling almost the same, he quietly waited for the world to shuttle. Soon, a prompt sound came to Lockhart's ear. Searching for the solidified world shuttle channel. Search successful. Teleporting. Transmitting. Welcome the host back to the Marvel world. Warning, after staying in this world for 30 days, the soul will gradually be branded with the mark of this world. You need to leave this world in time to avoid the contamination of the world's breath. Marvel world, Kamar-Taj library. Master Morin sat in a chair, leisurely looking at the magic book in front of him. He felt that, since he met Lockhart, his luck has become much better. Not only has his strength improved a lot, but the magic resources in his hands have also increased significantly, especially thinking back to the magic resources obtained the day before yesterday. Morin couldn't help but curl up the corners of his mouth. It just so happened that he was recently thinking about asking Master David to refine a top-notch defensive magic weapon. The wizard in charge of detecting latitude fluctuations sent a message that he had discovered abnormal latitude fluctuations. According to his experience, he would probably be busy recently. Those bastards might come to Earth again, so it is better to prepare in advance. Morin was thinking. Suddenly, Morin, I will borrow these 5 books first and return them to you after I go back. A familiar voice came from his ears. Morin looked up at the 5 books in front of him and said with a smile, okay, Lockhart, just remember to return them on time. After hearing this, Lockhart chatted briefly and prepared to leave. He still had some things to deal with. When Lockhart was about to leave, suddenly, by the way, Lockhart, there may be an alien invasion in New York recently. Pay attention. If there is any abnormal situation, remember to tell Cassilis in time. He is responsible for things around the New York temple. Lockhart was thoughtful when Morin's reminder came from his ears. After thinking for a while, he found a chair and placed it in front of Morin. After sitting down, he asked as if chatting with a friend, Morin, can you tell us more about the invasion of different dimensions? I see that there is not much introduction in the books. It just emphasizes the enemies of various dimensions, and the specific details are very vague. Morin heard Lockhart's question, and thought of the other party's identity, and introduced Lockhart. Kamar-Taj is responsible for resisting the invasion of dimensions around the Earth. You should know this. Seeing Lockhart nod slightly, he continued, Kamar-Taj constructs dimensional magic arrays through the 3 major temples to resist dimensional invasions. However, those powerful dimensional demons are all under the charge of the Supreme Sorcerer, and our job is actually to deal with those infiltrating enemies from different dimensions. Hearing this, Lockhart's face was strange. The more he listened, the more he felt that this person was a bit like him. Morin saw the change in Lockhart's expression and knew what he was thinking. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, Lockhart. Kamar-Taj has its own method of identification, which can distinguish whether the visitors from other dimensions have malicious intentions. After all, since ancient times, the visitors from other dimensions who came to Earth accidentally are not necessarily evil. Some are willing to cooperate, and some have even established a good relationship with our Kamar-Taj until now. Besides, Cassilis also told me about your matter. The Supreme Sorcerer agrees, and all the wizards in Kamar-Taj will not say much. You can rest assured about this." Hearing this, Lockhart asked thoughtfully, "Morin, I just heard you say that Kamar-Taj also has a cooperative relationship with some friendly alien dimensions. Can you talk in detail about how you cooperate specifically? Thanks to DB. Book friend 201612311932073345. Book friend 161,016,535,644. Zinsen Mioyiao, who doesn't control anything, kills a eunuch with one palm, and doesn't want to play in the wild for the monthly ticket. Chapter 174, Bringing Wizards to Marvel. Inside the magic luggage, the spell practice room. Repel quickly. Wingardium Leviosa. Many obstacles. In the center of the spell practice room, Ian, Remy and Vera cast spells on the alchemical puppets in front of them as usual, training hard. Looking at the alchemical puppet opposite, Ian waved his wand, and with a red light from the tip of the wand, a repel spell was successfully released, hitting the alchemical puppet opposite. Bang! The alchemical puppet moved slightly backward. Although the alchemical puppet quickly took another step forward automatically, Ian's face was still excited. For him who had just practiced magic for less than 7 days, the repel spell was considered a relatively difficult spell. Although his mentor Lockhart optimized it and reduced the difficulty of learning. But it was good to succeed once out of 5 casts. Once successful, Ian continued to wave his wand vigorously and said quickly, "Repel quickly, Zizzy." This time, the tip of the wand only emitted a faint red light, and the spell failed to be released. Ian was not annoyed and continued to wave his wand. After 3 consecutive times, finally bang. With the appearance of a red light, the alchemical puppet took another step back, and the spell was successfully released again. Seeing this, Ian looked happy, but immediately restrained his emotions, and continued to wave his wand and practice. The same was true for Remy and Vera next to him. As the 3 best students in Lockhart's first batch, they were more hardworking than others. At the same time, because of their hard work, the relationship between the 3 of them was better than that of other new wizards. Looking around, there were only 3 people in the middle of the spacious spell practice room, constantly releasing spells and practicing towards the alchemical puppet opposite. When they were tired, they sat cross-legged on the ground and meditated to rest. When their magic power was gone, they continued to sit cross-legged on the ground and meditated to restore their magic power. In addition, the 3 of them kept waving their wands and releasing spells, and they seemed to be working very hard. Suddenly, quickly repel. As Ian waved his wand, a slightly thick red light emerged and quickly shot towards the alchemical puppet on the opposite side. Bang! This time, after being hit by Ian's repulsion spell, the alchemical puppet quickly pushed back 3 or 4 steps. Ian was surprised, and he didn't think much about it, thinking that he had performed above his level. After quickly adjusting his mood, he continued to practice the spell. Quickly repel. Ian waved his wand vigorously and cast a spell. In an instant, another repulsion spell emerged, and this time the alchemical puppet retreated 5 steps away. Seeing this scene, Ian was thoughtful, so he waved his wand again and cast a spell. This time, accompanied by a slightly thick red light, it was successfully cast again after repelling, and the alchemical puppet still retreated 4 steps. The 3 consecutive spells were successfully released, far beyond the level of performance, which made Ian fall into contemplation, as if he had thought of something. At the same time, a voice came from his ear. Ian, try meditation. The speed of magic power recovery has increased by at least 50%. Vera, a girl who had just finished meditating and was sitting cross-legged on the ground, shouted excitedly. Remy, who was standing beside him, was even more excited. Thinking of what Professor Lockhart had said before, he said excitedly, Ian, Vera, do you think we have arrived in the new world? When talking about the new world, Remy's voice obviously rose a level. I think it should be. According to the information given by the mentor, the new world is more suitable for practicing magic than the wizard world. Not only will the power of spells become stronger, but the speed of practice will also be significantly improved. Ian tried hard to suppress his inner excitement and analyzed calmly, but the excitement could still be seen on his face. In the information conveyed by the mentor, the new world is more friendly to wizards, and the hope for the rise of new wizards is also here. Ian, Vera, do you think the new world is very beautiful? Remy said with a face full of longing. There are not even squibs here, and there is definitely no discrimination against squibs. Remy, who was rejected by his family because of his identity as a squib, was very sensitive to this. But after hearing this, Ian next to him pondered for a moment and said calmly, Remy, there may indeed be no dubs here, but don't forget what the mentor said. This place seems very peaceful on the surface, but the internal dangers are even greater. It's more dangerous than the wizarding world. We can't take it lightly. Vera next to him also said, yes, that's still right. The last time the mentor taught us some common sense of the new world, it was especially emphasized that superheroes should stay away from things like SHIELD. They are the source of trouble. Especially a Muggle agent organization called SHIELD. They are very troublesome and good at pestering people. It's easy to fall into their traps if you are not careful. Try not to communicate with them. After hearing this, Remy's expression returned to normal. He nodded and said, yes, although there are muggles in this world. But the teacher said, don't underestimate the muggle warriors in the new world. With their combat experience and the weapons they have mastered, ordinary wizards are definitely not their opponents. At this point, Remy showed an unconvinced look on his face. Both his parents are wizards. His parents have always looked down on muggles. In such an environment, although the tutor emphasized it, Remy really couldn't raise his attention to muggles. Ian, who was next to him, was different. He nodded in agreement. Indeed, ordinary muggles are not worth mentioning. But elite muggle warriors, with our level, can easily suffer losses if we are not careful. When he thought of the Muggle weapons magazine he saw in the wizarding world, and heard from his tutor that the muggles here have more advanced weapons, Ian was full of vigilance about the shield agents and muggle warriors mentioned by his tutor. He still had to return to the wizarding world to avenge his parents, and he couldn't fall in the new world. Immediately, the 3 of them stopped practicing spells, but excitedly discussed the changes after entering the new world. They tried meditation separately and felt the meditation effect that seemed to be greatly accelerated, and a trace of shock flashed across their faces. They were looking forward to life in the new world. Trying some more difficult spells, they found that the probability of successful release had increased significantly. Whether it was the casting speed or the power of the spell, it was always much stronger than before. After some attempts, although the surprise of the new world began to decrease as time passed, the excitement could still be seen between their brows. This was during their discussion. Suddenly, a footstep sounded from outside. They turned their heads and saw a blond man wearing a white shirt and black casual pants, with a dark blue ball bird standing on his shoulder. Seeing the familiar figure walking in front of them, the 3 of them shouted excitedly, "Teacher, you are here." Chapter 175, Wizards and Goblins Addicted to Movies. In the morning, the Marvel World, the Universal Book Cafe. Lockhart looked at the empty Universal Book Cafe and nodded slowly. This time when he returned to the Marvel world, he couldn't be as lazy as last time. He just wanted to do business, earn gold galleons, and read books. He should also pay attention to the improvement of strength and the training of combat experience. Especially when he thought of the war behind the Marvel world and the invasion of other dimensions mentioned by Morin. The nerves in his mind were slowly tightened. The Marvel world is more dangerous than the Harry Potter world, and there are many world-destroying disasters. Then, according to the original plan, the Universal Book Cafe was prepared to be upgraded to become a gathering place exclusively for wizards or people with extraordinary powers, and no longer for ordinary muggles. Therefore, according to the original idea, the store manager May and the clerks were all dismissed. After all, they could not receive wizards or other people with extraordinary abilities. Of course, in order to make up for the fact that they were used as substitutes before, everyone received a large amount of cash as compensation. As the store manager, May was given a large sum of cash as her startup fund on the grounds of investment because of her previous efforts. He wished her to have her own career in the Marvel world in the future. For May, she was fired less than a month after joining the company, which made her feel very uncomfortable. But seeing the 1 million investment amount given by Lockhart, her ambition was ignited again, and she was ready to open a store and make a big splash. The complaints about her boss Lockhart disappeared instantly, and she was full of gratitude. One is just a store manager, and the other is a boss. There is no need to compare the difference between the two. For Lockhart, 1 million is nothing to him, and it is useless for him to take so much money. And with May's efforts and ability, it is possible that the 1 million can be recovered later. Although he believes that, even if the 1 million is recovered, it will not be of much help to him. While thinking, Lockhart waved his wand, and a muggle shielding spell quietly covered the entire book cafe. The pedestrians around subconsciously avoided it and walked away. Then, he waved his wand again, and the magic power surged, drawing a circle in the air. A portal with sparks quietly emerged. Opposite the portal was a spacious and bright living room. This was a house that Lockhart bought specifically for Ian and the other two. He couldn't let Ian and the other two live in his house all the time. He felt it was a bit inappropriate, so he bought a house nearby for the three of them to live in, and they could come to him directly if they had any problems later. Anyway, they were wizards, so they didn't have to worry about the muggle expulsion spell. On the sofa in the living room, the house elf Goldcoin, the goblin Bruno and Ian were watching the TV in front of them intently. They didn't know much about the TV in the muggle world, not to mention the advanced version of LCD TV like the Marvel world, which aroused their curiosity, especially seeing the destructive effects of the muggle warriors using various powerful weapons on a thin screen, coupled with a sweaty fighting plot. They exclaimed from time to time, and subconsciously worried about the development of the characters in the movie. Well, this is because Lockhart wanted them to further understand the dangers of the muggle world, so he found some spy or war movies for them. Although they have been artistically processed, in fact, the agents in the Marvel world are no weaker than those in the movies. After Lockhart opened the portal, he found that the three people and two goblins seemed to have seen nothing, and he couldn't help but be a little speechless. Although he knew that movies were full of attraction for people who had just come into contact with them. But seeing this scene, he couldn't help but wonder if the magic he cast was too hidden, or if the movie was too attractive. Ahem. Lockhart coughed lightly, and the three people and two goblins suddenly came back to their senses. After turning their heads and seeing Lockhart on the other side of the portal, they hurriedly shouted, "Master! Teacher!" Then, Lockhart saw Amy and the goblin Bruno peeking at the movie with some lingering feelings, sighed lightly, and waved his wand. Click. As the power button was pressed, the screen went black. Remy and Bruno's faces flashed with regret, and then they quickly turned back to look at their master and mentor. "Master, is there anything you can do for Goldcoin?" As a loyal and responsible house elf, Goldcoin ran to the opposite side quickly after seeing his master Lockhart and shouted loudly, his eyes full of expectation. "Something's up, Goldcoin." Lockhart nodded slightly and then continued to say to Ian, Bruno and others, "Come over, I need you for something today." Following Lockhart's instructions, Goldcoin, Ian and his party all passed through the portal and entered the Universal Books. After seeing everyone was present, He waved his hand and the portal disappeared quietly. How do you feel about the house I bought for you? Lockhart asked Ian and the other two gently. Teacher, it's very good. The environment is very good, and the space is very spacious. I like it very much. Ian and the other two nodded, looking a little excited. They found that the Muggle rooms in the new world had many magical places, such as soft big beds, magical TVs and convenient flush toilets. Then, Ian said hesitantly, but, Mentor, it seems that it is not very convenient to practice spells here. Well, Ian tried to release magic in the house. The result was that the cracked wall made him give up the idea of practicing magic instantly. He could only cast a recovery spell to restore the influence of his spell. Regarding Ian's question, Lockhart thought about it and directly ordered the goblin Bruno, wait until tomorrow. You find an empty room. Cast the space extension spell and transform it to make it convenient for Ian and others to practice magic. Okay, Master. Bruno flattered. Since knowing the new world, he completely regarded Lockhart as a god. In an instant, his loyalty rose by more than one level. Being able to cross the world is unheard of in the wizarding world. And now Lockhart has actually done it. Based on this alone, he has reason to believe that Lockhart will definitely be able to control the entire wizarding world in the future. The master he is serving now will be the king of the wizarding world in the future. When he thought of this, Bruno was so excited that he trembled all over. Seeing Bruno's attitude, Lockhart didn't care and nodded slightly. Then he continued to ask, Remy, Vera, do you two have any questions? Hearing their mentor's inquiry, the two shook their heads slowly, indicating that they had no questions. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly to show that he understood, and then said, Ian, Remy, Vera, I called you here this time. The main reason is to open your eyes. Wait a moment, Bruno and I will rearrange this book cafe. You observe carefully. It will be good for your future. Especially Vera, don't you want to learn alchemy? You must seize this opportunity. After hearing what their mentor said, the three nodded one after another, full of expectation. Seeing the expressions of the three people, Lockhart smiled slightly, lowered his head, and said to Bruno, start making changes according to the previous plan. I'm responsible for the overall environment of the book cafe, and you are responsible for arranging the magic circle inside the space. Then, he ordered the gold coin. Gold coin, you are responsible for cleaning up all the garbage that will be generated later and don't affect our work. Hearing Lockhart's instructions, Bruno and Gold Coin nodded quickly to show that they understood. Then, Lockhart waved his wand, and a large amount of magic power rushed from his body to his arm and flowed into the wand. The tip of the wand glowed with a light golden light, covering the entire Wangxiang Book Cafe. Space extension. In an instant, the space of Wangxiang Book Cafe expanded several times. After seeing the spacious space, Lockhart nodded slightly, waved his wand again, and drew one after another light golden runes in the air that revealed a mysterious and complex atmosphere. Every rune that emerged would fly to the surrounding walls and disappear into them. In the eyes of Ian and the other two, large patches of pale golden runes appeared on the wall. The entire Vincian Book Cafe was filled with gentle magic, making them feel very comfortable, as if they were using air conditioning in the summer, refreshing from the heart. It was Lockhart who borrowed the magic circle of the Hogwarts castle to sort out the magic or energy particles around them, making them more suitable for people. At the same time, the goblin Bruno began to lie on the floor, holding a small alchemical hammer and a carving knife in his hand. From time to time, he knocked on the ground, as if looking for a suitable place to carve runes with the carving knife in his hand and construct a magic circle. Soon, he found a place that could serve as the core of the magic circle, waving the carving knife, and began to arrange the corresponding magic circle. In a house near Vincian Book Cafe, a shield agent was leisurely drinking coffee and playing with his mobile phone, and a series of machines were placed not far away. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing sound rang out. Bus, warning, large-scale energy movement detected. Big guys, please subscribe. The average subscription has been steadily declining recently, and the latest chapter subscription has not seen 1,000 in several days. The other one just came out 4 days ago. I'm a bit frustrated. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.